G'day, guys. Good to see you all. Now, if we crash out, you know what's happened. I've had another problem. If we don't, we don't. Simple as that. Actually, I was running late. I went to sleep 3 o'clock last night. I was doing some research. I didn't even realize the time. I looked at it and I go, fuck. I went to bed. I woke up at about 10 o'clock. I've just been running around like a mad chook, just came out of the shower, just dried myself off, tried to make myself a bit presentable. So if I'm not firing on all cylinders, you know why. G'day, Deborah. But as I get my pace, I'll be okay. You know me. A bit of a night owl, so not that it's the best thing, but anyway. Marica, good to see you, mate. Lamps. Trouble, always here. Good to see you as well. G'day, Lukey. He may be on later on. Or early on. I don't know. Depends how Lukey feels. If he wants to come on. Otherwise, you've got me annoying you for the next couple of hours. G'day, Richard. Blinky's probably gone shopping. Okay, Kerr. Or M. Kerrs, to be more precise. G'day, Kitty. And F. Good to see you, mate. And we've stopped there until things come through StreamYard. Refresh. How are people? Any interesting things you've heard or interesting questions you would like to ask? Anything that's fascinating you? Lovely people. Bloody hell. Actually came through StreamYard before Neff's comments. I'm going, what? Hopefully it all holds together. Is it actually coming across pretty okay? There's no glitches or sort of nice. Okay, good. Thanks, Richard. That's the key thing. Oh, there's the little bit of trouble. There's trouble with a capital T himself. What has he got for us today? Let me just zoom in on that. Get a proper zoom. Oops. That's about right. Is that what you look like, Blinky? Mr. Bean, a classic. That's the main thing, that it's coming across without any real problems. I could have cooked myself another 3-pack of bacons while I was waiting. Oh, in the waiting room, you mean? It was a couple of minutes. Bloody hell. Thank you, Kate. Good to see you here. At least somebody's got their mind on business. Hit the like button, you lot. G'day, Tinks. Good to see you, mate. Oh, yes. We know what Blinky's like. We don't even have Shell here to spank him. The problem is he enjoys it. That's the problem, you know. It doesn't work on him. We've given up. We know it doesn't work on him. Heard an update on the availability of Novavax? No, I haven't heard anything. They said that it was around September, October to be released in Australia. So that's all I've got on it. So until then, we don't really know when it's going to come out. The current situation in Australia has been a bit of a schmozzle in terms of their planning and stuff like that. The problem is you've got too many cooks in the, you know, you got all the state governments. The problem is the federal government dropped the ball in the early days. The state governments took over, and now they're sort of having to coordinate each other, and it's a bit of a not a very good coordination. Under the Constitution, it is a responsibility of the federal government, and they should have basically been running it from the beginning. It probably would have been run better by one authority than multiple authorities. Even if we agree with some of the politics and shit that's come, still, it would have been much better. I mean, in the US, it was run by the federal authority. And that's what federations are. Your central government runs it, not your state governments. So, yeah, don't know what happened there, but it's a bit of a idiotic sort of situation in this country when it comes to some of these things. And it's not even states' rights. States relinquished a lot of their rights under federation compared to the US. So they can't even use that as an excuse. So it's crazy. Skunk Master. Good to see you, mate. The weather must be improving up in those sort of areas. You guys must. Now entering summer, the summer months. We're entering the winter months. So things are getting a bit on the fresh side. Actually, what was it? Yesterday was a bit on the fresh side. I was wearing just I had my vest. I didn't have it on. I just had my shirt with a singlet. I was walking into, got out, walked a bit further down and go, oh, this is a bit fresh. So I threw on the vest. So, yeah. But in the evening, it was about this. It was actually a bit warmer. So, you know, it was a bit strange. But in the early hours and on the last week, which was the Friday, when I was heading to work, it was fresh. I'm going, ooh, this is fresh. So, and I do have a bit of endurance when it comes to cold. Even, you know, a lot of other people much more snuggly than I was. But, yeah, I did notice it myself. So, because I usually just wear the vest in the evening, not in the morning. So, I actually missed to say hello to Dylan. Good day, Dylan. I jumped the gun. I should have missed this guy. Anyway. Oops. In our second week of lockdown. Wonderful. So one good thing about Tasmania, we didn't really, probably the advantage of being on an island state, you're very far away from everyone else. And it's one good thing. Also, Blinky's very far away in Western Australia. Very, very far away, like in another country. It's actually a good thing. Richard. And how would you have restrained her? But let's not go there. Ah, yes. Hit the thumbs up, everyone, please. Did you watch Dr. Berg's video on PPIs earlier this week? And if you did, you think it's accurate? I did not watch it, and I've got no idea what he said. So my opinion is with PPIs that people should come slowly off them, because otherwise they're going to get a lot of sort of rebound, too much acid, because, you know, putting people on PPIs, all it does is actually just creates more proton pumps. Eventually, you know, the body fights back. The body wants to actually acidify the stomach to break down food and protect itself as well from pathogens. But unfortunately, these stupid doctors, but rather than fixing the problem, getting people off carbohydrates and junk, they basically give them these sort of, you know, contraindicated medication. But if you bring people off slowly and slowly adjust their diet, they usually respond much better. But I don't know what he said. I don't follow him. I don't subscribe, so I got no idea. If he said that, then fine. If he said something completely different, probably not. But I don't know what he said. So yes, I don't bother with it. These are sort of side issues I find irrelevant to sort of comment on. It's just general stuff. You know, we're talking about, you know, controversial stuff, real stuff. You know, so people saying really inappropriate speeches, inappropriate junk out there. That's what we're really asking. Only Victoria only ever seems to be us, getting a bit difficult to cope with now. Yes, both my sisters are in Victoria. The other one moved from Western Australia to Victoria. And she's not impressed with the amount of lockdowns either. God, you think Victoria was a penal colony? I thought Tasmania was. You're a penal colony now. Hey, and don't come to Tassie with your disease. That's what I usually say to my sisters. Fucking stay out of our state, you diseased people. She's not amused. Especially my oldest sister can take things a bit serious. Anyway, let's move on. I was just completed my 5-day of Fisetin. I need to rewatch your video, as I can't remember if I do it monthly or even 3 monthly or no serious health issues. If you've got no serious health issues, I usually say people do 3 months on, 3 months off, 3 months on, 3 months off. If people have got major health issues, then I do encourage them to do it throughout the whole year, for a whole year, and then sort of ease off in the second year and then go hard again on the third year. So that's people with a lot of mitochondrial damage. And the reason for that is because of its effect on mTOR, its effect on a number of things. You're still releasing a lot of dead organelles, a lot of proteins and stuff into the bloodstream. We do want to have some level of mTOR activation to basically put those back. So we don't want to over-inhibit over a long period of time, you know, or cause any hormonal issues. So it's the reason why we're talking about this sort of method: 5 days, then the rest of the month off, 5 days, then the rest of the month off. And at 500 milligrams and no more. And the reason for that is because that's what the research is showing. And we don't want to push it beyond that because we don't have any research. And as I said, people do that. They do it at their own risk. Don't come back crying to me. This is a long-term protocol. It's not something I do today and don't do ever again, or it's a long-term thing. You will be producing senescent cells for a very, very long time. If you're healthy and you combine it with something like Serol that also activates new stem cells at a much higher rate, I mean, fasting will actually increase stem cell activation, but a lot of people find it difficult to do continuously. High intensity exercise and stuff like that, saunas and a whole lot of other things will also have a bit of an effect in that regard. Niacin, but not very high doses, as I've always said. We're stay below 300 milligrams. We don't want very high excess. That can be problematic for a whole lot of reasons, which I've discussed before, because it inhibits CD38, which is a predictive mechanism. So we want to naturally lower CD38, which degrades NAD, and we want to do that by using Fisetin to basically slowly kill off, knock off, obliterate the senescent cells, and then allow new healthy cells to take over. And as that happens, naturally CD38 will come down because you've got less senescent cells, less damaged cells, and that's the whole thing. And obviously taking Fisetin at the same time, guzzling down seed oils and a whole lot of other crap, alcohol and whatever else, it's not doing you much of a good service. You're wasting you're probably slowing down the damage, but you're still getting damage from all these other activities. So it's not a panacea. It's not, but in combination with a good keto carnivore type diet, with a certain level of time restricted feeding, so you're not feeding all the time and pushing up insulin all the time, and keeping relatively insulin to a very tight amount of hours. I tend to eat within a window at the extremities, 4 hours, around about 4 hours to 8 hours. But mostly I average around 6 hours, mostly in my case. But I'm not always consistent. I have to be honest about that. I'm not. I have gone even over the 8 hours on some occasions, but try to stick with those because it keeps insulin relatively much lower, which means that, you're in a better sort of state. But that's always a difficult thing for some people. I understand that. But don't criticize, but as I say to people, which I hear out there, don't criticize a diet for your own inconsistencies. One good thing about Tasmania, let's not get carried away now, Harry. There's plenty of good things about Tasmania, Richard, plenty of good things. There's plenty of good things about New Zealand as well. Nice things. It is a nice place as well. But Tassie's a very nice place. Very similar to New Zealand. So as Bart would testify, that Tasmania is very similar to New Zealand. So if you like New Zealand, which I suspect you do since you live there, I suspect you'll like Tassie as well. We've actually got also some really nice Tassie devils. We're cute, but not very cuddly. Anyway, we're moving into summer now. Devox, lucky for you. We're moving in winter. Oh, well, variants. It's just another variant. Let's get over it. It's a variant. The media would have us believe that, it's the end of the world again. And if anybody, since nobody's asking, I might as well mention Mira's doing really well. So let that be a lesson to you. Keep your vitamin D status up, especially people in the southern hemisphere like Kate and myself. Let's not go crazy, okay? We're talking about 5,000 IUs in winter. No more. Please, no more. We want to keep, a couple of thousand IUs in that lower band, both retinol and because they balance each other out. So that's a sort of level. I will do a video in the future about fat soluble vitamins toxicity, why it happens, and all sorts of issues relating to it, dysregulation and stuff like that. So it would take about an hour to basically cover everything and try to show the research and explain sort of all these sort of things that people call toxicity, which isn't toxicity, and a whole lot of other related issues, lifestyle factors that are playing and all sorts of things. So it's a complicated thing at the moment. Just, you know, I mean, I've given you the information from before, that guy that was eating 25 eggs a day, shitloads of retinol in comparison to what crackpots say is dangerous. I'm not recommending thousands and hundreds of thousands of IUs of anything. That's just, I know there are other people, I disagree with them. It's like I disagree with people that basically, you know, so yeah, I wouldn't do 10,000 unless you've actually got a respiratory infection or whatever. Mira did, basically, I'll give you what Mira did for COVID. She basically did 3 injections of 10,000 IUs, but the active form. That means because it takes a couple of days for the actual form to convert, and she did the active form. Now, she's relatively young. She's younger than me. Okay, she's, you know, so, you know, I'm in my mid-50s and she's in the late 30s. So she's way younger than me in that regard. So, and that's what I'm sort of trying to tell you guys, that where somebody much older, I'd probably have them on 20,000 IUs. In particular, if they were in a nursing home and they were quite deficient, and if they were overweight, I may have them on higher amounts. It would depend on, but this would be a short-term thing. It's not, you know, something you do every day. On an everyday basis, you want to be around the 4,000 to 5,000 IUs, because you have to remember the body, the way it works. If you're out in the sun, you're getting anywhere between 10,000 and 20,000. Think ancestrally, and 20,000 IUs. Okay, so you're getting that amount, and then all of a sudden, your body will absorb a certain amount. Quite. You know, it'll be a couple of thousand IUs that will basically end up as free vitamin D in the bloodstream, and then eventually, you know, part of that gets stored and all that. But it will be over a bit of time as slowly those 10 to 20,000 IUs get absorbed. You don't bring it in rapidly. And the reason why you don't bring it in rapidly is because you've got enzymatic pathways that actually are storing it and converting and putting in different parts. So, and that's the reason why I don't believe in very high doses, you know, rapidly coming in. It's simple as that. So, you know, stick to more physiological levels. So when it comes to food, you know, in terms of retinol, if you eat a lot of certain types of animal foods, you will get around, you know, the 3,000 to 4,000, maybe even 6,000. Like that old geezer was getting, you know, probably up to 7,000 IUs. Now, we've got massive storage capacity when it comes to retinol, massive. And it's you know, so it's nonsense at all and all that. But there are conditions where you've got fibrosis of, and he actually even mentioned it, but he didn't understand it because this is how ignorant he is. He said he did research, but he didn't. The guy that actually spoke to Judy. But the thing is, you know, he talked about, he brought up taurine, and, you know, taurine actually, we know, breaks down fibrotic tissue. So it improves retinol storage in the liver. So basically, if you've got a damaged liver, yeah, you can get toxicity even from lower doses because you don't have storage capacity. You got to fix the liver first. But you know, somebody on an ancestral diet like a Maasai or an Inuit studying from a young age, never damaged their liver, you know, have got a proper body and all that, the functions, not an issue. But there's going to be cases where people do have issues and they have to fix those issues before they can, you know, if you've got severe fatty liver, and a severe fibrotic tissue, where, you know, you're going to have problems storing. So there's a whole lot of raft of issues why things can become complicated. And under those circumstances, you'd look at a much lower threshold, around about the 2000 type IU of both vitamin D and to balance the stuff and retinol until you can fix these underlying issues. And then you'd go back to normal, eating and stuff like that. There are issues that can arise because of damaged livers and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean the food's at fault. It's your body's got issues that need to be fixed. So, it's putting the cart before the horse, the other way around. A lot of these people, because of reductionism, they have this very problematic. It's again, some people out there talking about the thiamine, that you need a lot of thiamine and all that. Well, you don't. You only can store thiamine, which is B1, for about 18 days. So even if you mega dose, you can only store it for 18 days. That's it. You can't store any more. You can saturate, but is it a good thing to saturate? I haven't seen any good information on that regard. If you've basically got enzymatic pathways in the body that have slowed down, why have they slowed down? You've got to ask. Is there mitochondrial dysfunction that is slowing down those enzymatic pathways? I would say so. And I haven't done the video yet, but I will be getting into that sort of side as well to explain why these. I mean, it's like the CD38, another story. Everybody, let's suppress CD38. You could be putting yourself at risk of cancer. Where uncontrolled behavior of senescent cells, start proliferating because they're controlled. So this is again reductionism, saying, this is degrading NAD. Let's just take shitloads of NMN and stuff like that and other things to suppress CD38. Bad decision. No, what we want is our bodies to, over time, fix that, and they will adjust. You fix senescence, you get rid of senescent cells over time, CD38 naturally comes down, NAD improves, your mitochondrial function improves. And also the enzymes involved in in utilization of thiamine also improve. You don't have to force them. Forcing them can sometimes. We know that NAD, if you've got damaged mitochondria and you stick a lot of NAD precursors, that can over jizz the electron chain and cause more damage to the electron chain, to the actual mitochondria. Not a good thing. Now, am I saying thiamine could do something the same as megadoses? Potentially. We don't know. But I've come across some people that have done these sort of protocols that have got worse issues. So I'm suspecting, these are N of ones, but I'm going, is there a problem here with the megadosing thiamine? Maybe. So, and there's a whole lot of reasons for that, but I don't want to go into it until I do my video. Yes, so we live in a strange world. I don't know why I went on that tangent, but I was looking at the sort of stuff people were saying. Anyway, 40% meat, iron is heme. Is it the best bound to other proteins? Was it? Yeah, that's where you get your iron, from meat. Okay, you don't get it from anywhere, and then you allow you don't get it from supplements, and then you allow your own metalloproteins in your gut to absorb at the rate that they will absorb naturally all the different minerals that the body requires and homeostatically regulate that. It's when you overload with supplements that you can get imbalances. So it's one reason why I only say only supplement with salt, unless you're doing long-term fasts. I'm just cycling through your comments. Figo, good to see you here, mate. Haha, I just seasoned some diced goat. and beef liver to cook tomorrow. Sounds good. Sounds good. I haven't had goat for a while. Yeah. Something I should go and buy a bit of goat. It's been a while since I've had making actually like a stew, a goat stew. So, goat milk defrosting. Yeah, it's hard to get bloody raw goat milk down in Tasmania. I sort of, let's say, I had an access and then it sort of ceased. Anyway, shit happens. Yes. I'm trying to keep myself occupied mentally to avoid all talk of it. Yes, good idea. Do something different. Do something constructive rather than destructive, as they say. No, he's probably talking shit. Vigo, he's probably talking shit. Go and check my video on how much we secrete, 120 milligrams per day on average, unless you're a big bloke, you may, if you eat the foods, animal-based diet, you get more than you excrete. Unless you do long-term fasts, there's no requirement for magnesium supplementation. I don't supplement. I get no cramps. Actually, when I do supplement, I do get cramps because it causes imbalances. And that's how I learned quite quickly that it's not magnesium. It's basically maintaining good homeostasis rather than continually mixing up my homeostasis. So, yes, does not work. Is sulfur intolerance a thing, a problem? I've got dysbiosis. Yeah, look, there can be some people that are very sensitive to sulfur, and there is relationships with gut dysbiosis and a whole lot of other things in that regard. So yes, I usually tend to. It's a very hard call, especially if people have got like a lot of other related issues. But it also depends on the sources as well. So if you're actually getting it from a lot of plants, yeah, can be problems. If you're mega dosing on and you've got an underlying gut problem, yeah, it can be a problem. But if you're taking something like a gram of MSM, no. If you're taking a gram or a couple of grams of, and you're in the older age group. Now, if you're younger, you don't need taurine, if you're younger, unless you're basically a bodybuilder and all that, and you take 1 gram to enhance protein transport. So that's a different thing and all that. But anybody that's, younger than 40, I usually turn around and go, why are you taking basically, taurine? Your body biosynthesizes enough. And if you're eating plenty of meat, you're getting enough. You don't need a supplement. It's only, as I said, over 50 or in particular over 60. So, and the other thing is, there usually is dysbiosis. So you fix the dysbiosis, all that goes away. Our body needs a lot of sulfur, keratin, the actual, your hair, your nails and all that. Well, it's bound with sulfur. So, but a dysregulated gut dysbiosis, severe and all that, can you have, it's not actually the sulfur, it's all the other sort of things that are happening. So it's much more complicated. You've got to fix the gut. You've got to take some of the stuff that I've talked about to basically deal with some of the pathogens, eliminate them, and basically try and with B vitamins and vitamin D, try to fix the beneficial bacteria. It takes time. It's just the way it is. So things usually normalize and settle themselves down after that. Yep, that's it. Yeah, I wouldn't take that much. 5,000 is all you need. I keep 10,000 IU units in my drawer, and I only take them if I get a sniffle, or I'm thinking something's coming on. I know that basically my immune system is going to become more active, and since my immune system is going to become more active, I'm going to help it, and I'm going to add that additional. Then I go to 10,000 IUs, but only. And this is only what I do in winter. In autumn and spring, because I'm out in the sun, I'm still getting, I may not, if it's a very sunny day, I won't use any. And in the past, I actually didn't supplement at all. It's only due to COVID, only due to the recent situation that I've actually, because I can't get to the tropics, because I used to go in the sun, maintain a very good vitamin D status, and then in autumn and late autumn, sort of early winter, I'd be in the tropics, and for a month, sometimes and then I'd go back later on in the year as well. So I got a lot of exposure of of the sun, so I didn't need a supplement. That's the only reason. And people in colder climates in the northern hemisphere tend to eat a lot of like fish type things, which are very good source of vitamin D. Also the lamb, like if you go to Iceland, for instance, the lamb there has a lot of vitamin D. They think it's the actual vegetation. So it's not only, so those who are in the interior of Iceland, they eat the lamb that actually eats this really small grass that actually tends to have a much, increases both the omega-3s and also increases in the lamb, that is, increases also the vitamin D content. So it seems that these plants take more or produce more from their own photosynthetic sort of processes. And so they actually found that people in the interior that ate mutton, that means aged old sheep, and that's the best, because that will have the highest concentration of both vitamin D and good levels of those polyunsaturates of the omega-3s. And so that's what they found and that's what these people did. Then they slaughtered older sheep, and that's how it sort of worked. G'day, Lukey.
Hello.
Good to see you, mate.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, so basically we never really supplemented any of this sort of stuff. Even there is a thing where they call the winter blues in Scandinavia, where people sort of feel more depressed and all that, and really feel down due to less vitamin D. It's a reality. And when you're actually eating animal-based diet, you're actually increasing retinol, creating a bit of a bigger imbalance potentially. So and they would go through that stage. But these were people also that were outdoors, even in winter. They were still getting some exposure to sun. They were still producing some small amount. We are indoors continuously. So unlike Luke, that's in beautiful sunny Brazil, that can be outdoors all the time and sunbaking and all that, and impressing the young ladies in Brazil. But when it comes to myself, being in cold Tassie in winter, there's not much sun down here. Occasionally we get a day or two, and I won't supplement those days. I'll go out midday and I'll go be walking around or sitting around or whatever for 1 or 2 hours. Even in a work day, when I was working from home, I did that. And I'll be, as you know, shifting to work from home through the winter, specifically to do that again, because I'm trying to get as much exposure to the sun, even in winter, as possible. So do not fear the sun. But yes, I'm not into megadosing anything that you wouldn't get naturally if you were in an ancestral environment. You would not get megadoses. There are specific protocols for megadosing, short-term megadosing, like our B vitamins and many other things, and I've got no problems with that. but consistently megadosing is fraught with a lot of risks. Let's put it that way. Not a healthy thing. So, exactly. I thought it found your black seed oil info there. Not sure. Oh, that's Figo. I think I talked about that last time. Most of these oils do get rancid, guys. I wouldn't bother. I mean, a number of people have asked me, do you put any topical oils? And I said, would your ancestors have had an industrial site to actually extract any seed oil or any plant oil or whatever, and then basically whacked it on their skin? No. So why are you doing it? What does your skin need? It needs retinol. It needs MMK. So the metoclonine 4, that is the animal form of vitamin K2. It needs niacin. All these things are very high in animal foods. So what are they going to do? Well, they're going to provide that nutrition that your skin needs, that your body needs. So do you need to stick something on your skin? I haven't put any stuff for years. And I use, soaps. I don't even use, I just wash myself with a soap, hair, body, whole lot, just with a bar of soap. And it's soap without any chemicals or crap in it or whatever. So, I mean, people overcomplicate things as if people out there had, the Maasai or, the Inuit had all these special products or whatever. No, they just had animal fats as a soap type thing that they wash themselves occasionally. So get over it. It's what you put in your mouth that makes your healthy body and skin. It's not what you put on it.
Yeah.
And a lot of the other crap that's on that can create certain levels of inflammation, other problems that are not good. I suspect you've got, with your lovely skin, Lukey, you put nothing on, do you? It's all natural.
No, nothing whatsoever. And it's funny, actually. Like many people say that, it's because you are young or something like that. But the fact of the matter is, I'm just taking care of myself the ancestral way, and my skin is great as a result.
Look, there's plenty of people out there that are much younger and look much older. Just look at Greta. Yeah. Let's look at Greta. Just look at Greta, how old she looks, and she hasn't even got out of, we're not sure whether she's got out of puberty yet. So that's what a plant-based diet will do to you.
Yeah.
It will age you more rapidly. And the mechanism, is not nutrient deficiency only. It's high deuterium. When you're on a plant-based diet, 100% plant-based diet, your deuterium levels are much higher. You don't have the fat-soluble vitamins, which are very important, sufficient to basically regulate the matrix metalloproteinases, something that I've talked about even before I had a channel. When I was on Bart K's, I was talking about matrix metalloproteinase. Some people are now starting to get the drift that these things do have a negative effect if they're overexpressed by the liver, a negative effect on your whole body, including your skin. Now, if you basically consume enough, you get enough of the fat-soluble vitamins, these things will be regulated, and they'll be regulated properly. Another reason why you shouldn't listen to crackpots who say we should eliminate vitamin D and retinol from our diet because it's toxic. These people are idiots. They want you to basically overexpress matrix metalloproteinase. Again, some reductionist nonsense, and they want to age you faster. That's what happens to the vegans because they don't get enough of this stuff, plus cholesterol, which is required for vitamin D. Well, vitamin D is just basically cholesterol with a slight modification to it. So basically, You need these foods in your diet. Simple as that. You know, we're not going to basically. Yeah, look, there are issues with drugs as well, and also some drugs sort of have a negative effect on some of the sulfur pathways as well, and how sulfur interacts with other tissue in the body. So it's a complicated thing. I always say once you get on an ancestral diet, you eliminate slowly, you get rid of the drugs out of your system, the body usually starts regulating itself properly and getting back to normal homeostasis. You know, it just takes time. As Lukey knows, you know, he's been on medications himself, and as he's basically shifted to an ancestral diet, getting out there and getting the sun and becoming a sun lover, his body has basically started to correct itself, started to get better.
Yes, and it's funny because even stuff I wasn't aiming to heal actually got better as well, because I used to be really allergic, and it's like I'm a completely different person now. I used to walk around with like what are they called? Antihistamine. Yeah. And because for my nose and stuff, because I had a bad allergic rhinitis. Where's that anymore?
Hey, my younger sister, asthma for 25 years. Okay, 25 years. Stayed with me for 10 months. Got on my diet. Completely reversed her asthma for 25 years. Threw away a puffer. Threw away a puffer. She's still struggling with smoking. She still smokes a bit. She's on and off and on and off. She can't decide whether she's going to give up smoking. But anyway, she gave it up for a certain period and then back on again, and, back and forward. But it doesn't seem to have an effect on her asthma, does it? The asthma hasn't come back because it has nothing to do with smoking. Smoking just makes it worse, the symptoms, but doesn't cause it. So there is no causal. And as I said, show me a study that shows causal link between asthma. It doesn't exist. The biggest problem with tobacco isn't actually the tobacco itself, it's the nicotine. And you can actually inject yourself with nicotine from any source, and it will create endothelial dysfunction. So it's the nicotine. Doesn't matter whether it's coming from cannabis, from tobacco, from what are they, the sort of vaping, from any source that nicotine is coming from, it is causing endothelial dysfunction, period. So
but some people, I've heard of like people using it as a nootropic, and I'm like, nah, that seems really bad.
Oh, you can use a lot of things as a nootropic. You can take certain types of chemical compounds. You can take basically poisons like cyanide, very low amounts. They actually act as nootropics as well. Yeah, I always come back to first principle. Would humans have used these things naturally? No. So should they? No. Now, there are some nootropics in terms of compounds that the body actually either creates and actually over time, like with taurine sort of declines over time, things like that you can actually get from animal products. Now, using some of those things for specific ailments, this is not for general use. Most people don't need to use that, but people that have got specific conditions, you can use some of these sort of nootropic approaches to help them if they've got mental sort of, they're transitioning off drugs. There's a lot. It's a complicated picture, but it's useful for the general population. No, just eat a species appropriate diet and you'll be fine. Okay, so there are some legitimate concerns about escape variants due to mass vaccinations. Oh, look, there's a lot of nonsense out there, HD, but there's nothing really. I mean, the biggest problem with, they're just variants. every single virus actually generates variants. It's part of it. It's an evolutionary process. They actually evolve much faster than other species. They're actually designed to evolve and evade. So they're always going to create slight variants and all that. But certain types of proteins, certain types of like the specific types of spike proteins are very hard to alter because they use them to get into the cells through receptors. If they alter them too much, they won't be able to get in, and so they'll become benign. They'll no longer be able to basically infect or replicate in the cell. So, when people say, oh, the spike protein could become could alter, and I'm going, great. That means if it alters enough, it will not be able to get into the receptor. It's unlikely to happen because if something's in an organism and is exploiting that organism, what it will try to do is actually improve the receptor connection, not decrease it, unless it basically moves to another species, dies out in one of the species, and basically then replicates differently to exploit the new host. And we've known certain viruses that have gone to dogs or cats or whatever, and they have basically adapted to that organism, and they can no longer cross-infect us or other species. So these things change, and they do take some time, but they do change. A variant is just basically, this is not a new type of strain. So with the flu, you usually hear there's a couple of different strains of the flu. Well, they are actually different in a number of their protein coatings and the way they are structured. So as a concept, they're all coronaviruses, but some of their, their sort of structures are slightly different. And these protein structures in particular. So they are different, and where one flu vaccination may create a response and then protect you, another won't, because it's changed. It's a different strain. A variant is just basically the same thing, but just slightly. Some of the protein have been altered, just slightly. That's all it is. Now, it may be to basically allow the virus to actually infect faster at a much faster rate or replicate faster. But at the same time, it's the same thing. So if you've been exposed to it before, you've got antibodies. If you've had a vaccine, you've got antibodies. So it's a non-issue. Now, obviously, I don't recommend the current ones because of the clotting factors, the autoimmune related issues, and all these other things. I don't like putting things in my body that replicate and behave like a virus and incorporate new types of protein structures that shouldn't be there, like the adeno from a different animal. We've seen what HIV, stuff from other animals can do to humans. We don't want. I'm not saying that it's going to cause this, no, but we should be putting these sort of things in. What we should be doing is the traditional approach, like we've done with flu vaccinations, and we've got no real problems. There are some people that are sensitive to flu vaxes, and that's due to basically, because the medium that was used was egg. They could have an allergic reaction to eggs. There are some people that have got severe allergies that can react as well, but they'll react to anything. It's not only the flu thing, they do react to other compounds and can have anaphylactic shocks, but those people are reactive to many things. And if they know they've got this sort of condition, it doesn't matter what they take, they should be basically even if they get the virus, they will react badly, more badly than other people, because they've got this underlying problem sensitivity. So let's not blame the vaccine for that. Let's blame the vaccine for the problems that it really has. Legitimately proven. We know that mRNAs cause autoimmune problems in a number of people. That's quite clear. The second, adenoviruses clotting factors. It's in the literature. It's not Harry Serpanos saying it. It's in the fucking literature. In the scientific literature, that adenoviruses cause clotting factors. So why would you put things in the body that replicate to create these sort of conditions? and get incorporated. We know that a large part of our genome has viral DNA. So why would you incorporate these that potentially create these risks long-term to ourselves? Now, some people are outlandishly making claims that they can't prove, that it's going to end the world and do all sorts of things. That's bullshit. And I've pulled up people on that. It's speculation. Now, could there be adverse effects on a mass scale? Potentially. But even if it's a small amount, it could end up, a small percentage can still end up in hundreds of millions on the planet, still can end up in a lot of people. So don't get me wrong, it's still going to be a bad day for those people. But the thing is, we need to be honest that it's still to some level in the realm of speculation. There is a risk. There is not basically like I've connected the dots perfectly and I know exactly how this biological, these proteins are going to play out their code and how they're going to affect different biologies around the world. So, but it is a risk. Why take it? That's why I'm waiting for the Novavax, because basically all it is basically they've taken the spike protein in this case, they've actually infected. So rather than they've used a viral vector as well, but rather than putting the viral vector in the human, they've put it into moths. And then they've replicated, and then they've cleared out all foreign proteins. So there's no foreign proteins there. All you have is the spikes, a whole bunch of spikes. And then they use these carbon nanoparticles to connect them on. That's for stability, so they don't degrade. That's all it is. Okay. And that's how they actually provide them then as an injectable. The Sinovax is slightly closer to the way we do the flu vaxes. They're very, very much. So they don't use a viral vector. They just basically put all the actual spikes, all the different proteins into a sort of a medium, a bit like we do with eggs. They grow it, they cultivate it, and then they also at the same time have other types of compounds in there, because like flu vaccinations, you have the deactivated part of the virus still has to be in a medium that actually can be stable. Whether you use some sort, it's all carbon based, or life is carbon based. What type of whether it's a single a small carbon particle, or it's a sort of a medium of different carbon molecules that it's tied to, it's irrelevant. The medium that is used, but that medium could come from an animal source, like with eggs as an example, and some people can react to that. So they're trying to move away now to creating these sort of other non-carb, a carbon thing that it's neutral, that our body will see it as, like if you sit behind a vehicle, you'll ingest a whole lot of particulates. What the body does is it goes, I can't do anything with these. This is foreign. And it will just basically slowly excrete it through the bile and through the feces, get rid of it. Well, these particles, exactly the same thing will happen to them. The medium that they're using, and they're using this sort of thing is because they don't want people to have that are susceptible to eggs or something like that have anaphylactic. That's why they've moved away. They're starting to move away from eggs and other sort of mediums to cultivate these things. So just because they're using, don't listen to any crackpot out there. These are just basically little carbon things to be able to stick these spikes on, so they basically don't degrade, so they can be held into something sort of some medium, and then can basically be kept in a state where they don't fall apart and become useless. Because if those protein structures fall apart, well, basically then you've just got amino acids. So the body's not going to create. You don't have the spike proteins anymore for the body to create a reaction to. So you've got to maintain them in some way. That's the only thing. That's why they're using this method, because they want to move away from eggs and stuff like that, because there are people that are susceptible to these things. That's, so it's a new approach slightly to a traditional method. So it's a traditional method with a slight variation in approach, because they want to make it less problematic for people, for everyone, not just the majority, but covering even those small minorities that react badly anaphylactically to certain things. That's why they've moved in this direction. So that's why I say the Novavax is very much like the traditional, with a safer sort of method of holding it, of maintaining it in that medium. So it's a much better way in that regard. I don't believe we should be using things that incorporate into our cells and replicate. I think that's a really, it's experimentation at its. We would not allow something like that. Generally, we would say, why would you use a viral vector? I mean, I know it was used in cancer, and that's why there was a whole lot of side effects with a lot of people having autoimmune issues in cancer. And it didn't really work anyway, because it's just another one of those stupid cancer therapies that just failed miserably, because we know it's a metabolic disease. You get a ketogenic diet, cancer improves dramatically for most people, unless they're too far gone. I just wanted to cover all that sort of stuff, because there's a lot of nonsense and misinformation out there about a lot of this sort of stuff. Yes, it's not a whole lot of companies are not trying to kill off their basically customer base. Okay, that's nonsense. When people say that but the problem is they are reckless. These people are reckless because they want to make profits, and they're not thinking through the potential risks properly. That's the thing which I get pissed off about with a lot of these multinationals, where there's a bit of a disconnect with reality. They're more focused on the bottom line and not thinking that some of this stuff, has a number of underlying issues and will be negative for a number of people. So that's where I sort of come off. That's where, I'm between the sort of the crackpots that are saying it's going to end the world, and then the other people on the other side that basically are saying that it's perfect. It doesn't cause any problems, bullshit, it does. And it's been shown in the literature to cause autoimmunity, these mRNAs. If it wasn't in the literature, they could claim that, but this technology is being used in cancer therapy for some time now, in a number of other therapies, and in all these therapies in the literature, bar none, every single field that it's been used has shown autoimmune problems and a number of other issues. Where the new issue comes with in case with this sort of vector is the potential for what Bart's talked about and a few others, the potential risk of a cytokine storm. That's where the risk. But that is, again, as I pointed out to Bart, and he agreed as well, that is speculation, very much. We don't know. There is a risk, yes, because the reality is you've put in an organism that's always going to be there replicating. Okay, so if you've got a weak immune system for whatever reason, or not enough a low vitamin D status, could you be at risk down the track? Potentially, because it's still there replicating. So I've got a lot of concerns about a lot of these sort of things in that regard. I don't think it's the right method to use. Personally, looking at the literature, looking at what has happened in other areas where this technology is being used, there's a lot of risk associated with it. I usually say to people, if you've actually taken one of these, I hope you maintain a good vitamin D status for the rest of your life or a very long time, because I can't guarantee you either way, because I'm not God. I can't see the future. I can't predict the future. I can only talk about potential risk, and that's all I can talk about and nothing else, So So basically, we've got to be very careful with our language, because then I want to convince the majority of people out there. I'm not interested in basically satisfying some crackpot or whatever, or some movement. As I've said, I don't care on these issues, on any controversial issue. If I lose half my subs, I don't give a shit. I don't do this basically to pander to people's delusions or people's, misinformation or whatever. Just because something sounds good doesn't mean it is good. So we've got to be very, very careful on that sort of stuff. But at the same time, we've also got to be honest about the risks, because there are risks. And for some people more than others, So again, if you're forced, I would not personally take the AstraZeneca or any one of those, which is an adenovirus, an adeno type vaccine. But there are people that it may be forced by the employer or all sorts of circumstances and all that. And if you're taking something like that, at a minimum, I would be taking a low dose aspirin for at least a month if I was doing that. But again, I'd be going as far as the law courts, to protect my civil rights as a person. I would not allow, anybody to put anything into me personally that I didn't believe in or considered a risk of any sort. And that's me, as far as I'm concerned. But I'm honest about it, why and what. And the only thing that I would basically use at this stage is anything that's been done as in the traditional way. Some people have talked about Sputnik. Well, Sputnik is also an adenovirus carrier. It's all same thing as the AstraZeneca, but it's just a Russian form of AstraZeneca. So when people say, "Oh, I'm going, well, that's what it is." So just because it's from Russia, because you've got sympathies towards there, wrong. So how come the Western one's bad, but the Russian one's good, and it's an adeno, and I'm going, oh, okay. So yes. I think there's a list somewhere. I can't. Yeah, but just find that page. I should have emailed myself the link that.
I just remembered something, but I'll say it on chat and
Yeah.
keep it on the
So I don't care. You can
question.
Okay, it's a bit. Is it too controversial? Is it?
No. It's just a snippet here, but I don't want to like let's keep things in order.
Yep. Good. It's too controversial. Fair enough. And let me just add that there. This is a list of all the actual stuff. So this is Sputnik, as you can see, viral vector.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So what did they use? I can't remember what they used And here, adenovirus. So AstraZeneca, Sputnik, Johnson & Johnson, and the other one was Convidencia. And that is, it must be Argentinian or South American. Have you heard of that? Convidencia?
It's
so these are American. These are all adeno. So basically they're using, they're called a viral vector vaccine. So that's what all these ones are in that regard.
Yeah, I'm glad you talked about the clotting factors thing, and I did tell because I had heard about it, but like in passing and not in too many details. But I did tell my dad to like avoid taking those because he did have some risk of like cardiovascular disease a few years ago. So yeah.
Okay, so because I've heard some people say, "Oh, Sputnik's safe."
Well,
that's the sort of the certain people in our community which are sort of tend to be pro Russia, and they'll throw that around. But I always say, it's just another adenovirus, guys. So stop talking shit in that regard. So, yes. I mean, they have been used elsewhere, like with Ebola and stuff like that. And if you're looking at certain conditions like that, you'd probably say, give it to me if you're in that sort of environment, because it's so deadly. That is a real deadly virus. It's not something to be, joked with.
Mm-hmm.
So there is some fundamental differences between these things, and I try to remind people that there are primary differences. Sure. So let's remember that we don't want to put anything in our body that actually has some mechanism of replication, whether it's whatever method, whether it's some sort of vehicle that whatever it is. We do not want that. All we want is the virus in a deactivated form. That's it. So basically what you're getting is, if you get the virus naturally, COVID, so you're next to an infected person, they cough, you get it. You will get, if you've got a good vitamin D status, like Mira improved her vitamin D status, she basically survived it and basically recovered very quickly. Within a couple of days, she was back to normal. So, so she took three injections of 10,000 IUs of vitamin D. So at the beginning, actually it was because she didn't tell me initially. So it was the third day. So it was on the third day, on the fifth day, and then towards the end of that. So she had already allowed herself to basically get quite sick over 3 days before, by the time it all, me driving her mad and pushing her like mad, I said to her, do not go to the doctor. And she said, you will die if you go to the hospital. I said, do what I tell you. And I was quite emphatically about it. She got pissed off a bit with me initially for being a bit emphatic and pressuring her, but she gets over it, and then basically she did the injection. You got to be some, as they say, cruel to be kind. You got to be very forceful and pressure. And I'm not a weak man, so I told her, you need to go and do that and stop fucking bitching and go and do it. So she basically went and did it. She got the first injection. The next day she started feeling better. Then later on, she, second day or third day, she got another one, and then she got a third one. So she's going, I feel fine. I'm pressuring to take a fourth one. But anyway, that's me. I like to cover all bases and be on the safe side than on the risk side. But yeah, she recovered pretty well. Biggest problem, what Michelle actually said, no one is speaking. The news speaks on vitamin D deficiency and insulin resistance, and it's exactly the issues, And luckily, it's taken a long time for me to get Mira off sugar as well. So she basically doesn't use sugar. She used quite a bit of sugar with her coffee. She doesn't do it anymore, which is good. So, having quite a few cups of coffee a day and putting a whole lot of sugar in, not a good thing. So she's been able to kick the sugar habit quite a bit. And, she's still not low carbing or ketogenic or anything like that, but she's much lower. She eats far more animal products now, so the amount of glucose going in is she eats just very small amounts of rice. She's quite physically active as well, so it's not a big issue. I would prefer her dumping the rice completely, but I don't think she's going to do it culturally. From that environment, really hard. When I suggest that, she sort of gives me the funny look. I'm reducing it. I'm not giving it up. Okay. I don't want to seem to my family as strange like you are, but you're foreigner, so they expect some eccentricity and strangeness. Okay, love.
Very interesting.
So basically, you know what I mean. You live in a culture where, carbs are being used for a very long time.
Yes.
And it's people look at you strange. We say, you don't need any?
Yeah, you don't need any. And my mom was like, what? You're telling me you're not eating rice and beans anymore? What's that?
Yeah, exactly. They look at you in a very strange way, and they go, you're weird. So...
Yeah, but that's not the first time someone's called me weird, so just another thing on the list.
Yep, very much that is the actual thing with Morley. Look, biggest problem is a lot of people make their life on a single supplement or a single thing and make a whole theory around it and think that, this, it actually worked for one person or worked for them. And then they think, because in many cases I find that some of these people are extremely deficient in vitamin D or extremely deficient in retinol or extremely deficient in menaquinone 4, extremely conditioned. And they think that this is the cure for everything. Because once they take it, they have an N of 1 experience and they think it's but I always go back to square one, to basic physiology and basic biochemistry and say, what is the rate limiting effect of the organism? How much can the organism metabolically, through enzymatic pathways, how much can you deal with at any one time? And when you look at that, you realize you don't need as much. And when you look at food, actual food, can you get these mega doses? No, you cannot. Even if you're in nature, like vitamin D, you can only get up to 20,000 IUs, and then it is slowly stored. It comes, you'll get it'll move from the skin over a couple of days, and it will start storing most of it. The body stores it. It does not actually have it. Very small, a few percentage points are as free vitamin D floating around in your bloodstream going to all these. The only time that the body will actually physiologically release a lot of that stored 25-OHD is when you've got a virus. So when you've got an infection, it immediately upregulates the immune system and immediately releases a whole lot of vitamin D to populate the receptors. That is when, if you've got a deficiency, you've got a problem, because you can't populate the receptors with sufficient vitamin D. That's where the problem lies. It's not basically a deficiency. It's not basically a lack of not taking in enough. It's actually an underlying deficiency. So if you've basically, and this is why you have to check vitamin D, because you may have very good status, like yourself. You're getting it from the sun, you've got very good status. And even if you go out into the sun, the body will not absorb. If you've got a very good status of vitamin D in your body, your skin will not absorb as fast. It will down-regulate the absorption.
Okay.
And maintain homeostasis to a certain level. This is why I don't like supplements, mega dosing on supplements. I prefer getting it naturally from the sun.
Yes.
We are designed not to be taking supplements, but to eating ancestral foods and getting it from the sun. That's what but because we have created artificial, unnatural environments, we have to supplement with vitamin D. That's the only thing I supplement, vitamin D. The other stuff is all aminos, and that you can actually get from food. It's sort of laziness. Sometimes I don't feel like eating a lot of eggs, and I have choline because I have genetics, which I have to take it. Somebody who's like Chinese, 76% of them have, like the Han Chinese, endogenous capacity to convert, to produce their own choline in large amounts. They got no problems. And if somebody who's on a carnivore diet will basically take methionine, convert it to choline, and choline will convert to folic acid. So they don't have to, they just need to eat methionine. They only need to eat meat, and they will go through all these conversions and provide the body what it needs in terms of folic acid, folate, and choline. It's only people like me, who are a very small minority of people that have got certain genetics that require to eat more choline-rich foods. That's the only thing. And sometimes I get bored with eating those foods, and I supplement. That's the only reason. But I'm not saying to people you need to supplement, in terms of choline. I'm saying that if you have these genetics like me, then you need to, if you're not eating it on a daily basis. So it depends on your circumstance. But if you're basically eating sufficient meat and you don't have these genetics, which 90% of the population don't, then you've got no issues to worry about choline in there. The only time I use choline supplementation then is if somebody's basically coming off a non-ancestral diet, they're on a shit diet, and then basically they need to basically clear out a whole lot of fat that's in their liver. Then they need choline to export the fat out. To get it out, you need choline. So if you need to, the only way to reverse fatty liver, you need choline and taurine. And then under those circumstances, then, because taurine also is very good for dealing with fibrotic tissue, improving bile function, a lot of different things, and a whole lot of other components in there that assist with reversing fatty liver. So they work synergistically together. Also, MK4 also helps, because it also helps with the biosynthesis and a number of other biological processes. Milk thistle is another important thing. So I usually use those things to deal with. But at the same time, if you eliminate all the fructose, over time, if you don't have a genetic SNP like mine, you will eventually, it'll just take longer to get rid of the fatty liver. So if you want to do it faster, that's when we supplement. If you want to do it slower, that's when you just do an ancestral diet, and eventually your body will fix it over time. It'll just take quite a few months. So do you want to do it quicker? That's why we supplement. So there are supplements are for short-term, strategically changing the situation, fixing things more rapidly, so then we can get to live better lives. So that's what we're using. Supplements have got their place, as I said, for deficiencies, for fixing, correcting things and all that. But they're not a panacea, and they're not to be used in high amounts for years upon years. They will create problems and imbalances and all that. If you use high doses of vitamin D, you will drive down retinol and you will start having conditions which are associated with retinol deficiency. Even if you're eating, you will create these imbalances. So you don't want to do high doses. It's not a good idea. Short-term intervention, yep, fine. There are certain conditions I even recommend, high doses of vitamin D for certain conditions, or people who basically have like very obese and are vitamin deficient. I'll put them on 100,000 IUs because most of it will go into the fat cells. And when they're starting to lose weight, they go on a ketogenic diet. I will keep them off. They won't be on liver. They won't be on, taking any vitamin D supplements and they won't be, because they've got plenty of the fat soluble vitamins stored in their fat cells. And for about a year, I'll let that actually come out of their system before even considering supplementation. So, everything we do has to do with the condition the person finds themselves in. What were they doing before? What condition were they in? And how so the protocols are going to be different. That's why I say, I don't do these things. I provide the information. But if you want somebody to coach you through, you have to go to somebody like Pim, like Mary, like Bart to coach you through, because that's what they do. I have a day job. Maybe in the future when I don't have a day job and I'm retired, I may do some of this sort of stuff myself as well. But at this stage, I don't have the time. I did a bit and I just realized I was just burning out. It was just too much. You can't do everything. That's why I dropped doing it, even though I did free consultations, I just realized I just couldn't keep up. It just became impossible. Too much of a stress on me. So I basically gave it the wide window and just said, well, send me an email. And when I get around, I get around. It can take sometimes 1 or 2 weeks, sometimes immediately, depend on how much stuff. Most of the people now have switched on to realize, I'll just leave a comment because Harry replies to comments very fast. And that's probably the better thing. The comments there, I'll reply to it, done. If I think you need to email me more details, I'll say, send me an email. If I don't, I'll give you a quick reply because most things can be just quickly replied. They're just general stuff, and I don't want my email account clogged up with a whole lot of stuff which is just generic that I can just give a quick answer to. But for specific stuff, when I request it, yes, then just send it to me, and then I'll give you a more detailed sort of thing when I've got time. But that's the sort of way I sort of operate now, because it's just too much otherwise. You still, and also too much negativity gets to you psychologically. It's not a good thing, believe me. So it's the reason why doctors and psychiatrists have higher rates of suicide and things like that. I suspect because of all that negativity. It's it's too much for the psyche to constantly having to deal with too many issues or negative problems continuously. So yeah, there's all that sort of stuff. Egg intolerance, as I said, there's all of that sort of related stuff. The next step in evolution, salad boy, girth. Grift. Anyway, I did some anecdotal research. There's always dangerous things with anecdotes. You should know that. My family who advised to take 10 or even with conditions, none of them got the sniffles ever. Yeah, exactly. So some people, if people are eating quite a bit of, like that old geezer that was getting probably up to 7,000, if you're getting 7,000-8,000 IUs of retinol from your diet, other things like that, then, being at that level where it balances to a 1-to-1, that's probably fine in that regard. But I tend to say if you've got no sniffles or whatever, stick to 5. If you've got sniffles, I've got my 10,000 there. I fucking take them. I can tell you, and if I really feel crappy, I will take a mega dose on the first day, like 50,000 IUs and another 50,000 IUs, and then I'll drop back to 10. for a couple of days for the remainder of the week. So I'll mega dose because I just want to saturate my basically receptors, my immune receptors, because they're going to be upregulated. So I basically want to give them all the tools they can take. And if, also these receptors, I usually will throw in there because I do have like metaquinone 4. I'll throw that in as well because I'm dosing high in that. And also I'll throw in a bit of retinol as well. So I'll have a bit of extra liver or stuff like that to get a bit extra, or more eggs or stuff like that to get more retinol. So again, because retinol is also very important for colds as well. It's actually been shown that when you combine just vitamin D, you don't get as good results. You get better results than being deficient, but when you combine retinol as well, actually it is even a better result. So there is a thing about synergies in the body. And we see it, there is a homeostatic synergy between things to work much better. I look at, for instance, cell proliferation. When we look at all the enzymes involved in cell proliferation, what are they usually regulated? There are always the 3 key fat-soluble vitamins: retinol, vitamin D, and they vary in different like in the breast tissue and in the actual prostate, it tends to be they need a bit more vitamin D, a bit less retinol, and MK4 also plays a bit of a role there. It's not clear how it actually plays that role, but it does play a role. It's actually highly associated that when you've got the others but very low MK4, you don't get the same sort of results. So it's playing a role, but we just don't understand the mechanism. Okay, so it does control proliferation. So if you've got a good vitamin D status, and I think to a large extent these sort of this explosion in basically around the world of prostate cancers and prostate, issues that we're seeing, if you take a look, it's basically the lack of fat-soluble vitamins in the diet that have been severely reduced. People are highly deficient in vitamin D and highly deficient in retinol and the other fat-soluble vitamins. They just are, so it's just a reality. We live in a world where people are eating too much fucking kibble. Yeah, look, if you're fine when you were young, it could actually be. There are a number of bacteria that in the actual body, some of the bacteria can behave a bit, all our microbiomes are not identical. They do have some variations, and there are some that have basically been associated with allergies. There are also some that tend to basically deal with medium chain triglycerides in a different way as well, and can actually produce certain allergies. That's why I've said I don't like people megadosing on medium chain triglycerides for the similar reasons, because there's a lot of allergic type issues related, unless you're Polynesian and you've got some, adaptation they consume a lot of coconut, and they've got some of Southeast Asians as well. But I do have issues with people from Northern Europe, which had less in their diet. But then again, if they're completely healthy, you don't notice as much if it's coming from coconut. It's only specifically from like a concentrated form, which is a medium chain MCT oil, which is a concentrated, which is a key issue. But some people even have a certain, but we don't know exactly whether these people's anecdotes are due to salicylate or whether it's to the MCT. So, when I ask them, I go, have you checked? They go, no. Then we don't really know. So, there's a lot of stuff. We've got these black holes where people have got a lot of so-called anecdotes, but really it's not based on anything that is really rock solid. So it's like people saying, oh, I get this effect on ketosis, I don't feel this or that. And I'm going, have you still got an underlying insulin resistance that you haven't dealt with? So that's sort of, but it's, I mean, I always say go to PIM. There's a craft test, but also there's a number of other tests that PIM is able to send you to do. And those can actually show whether you do have an insulin resistance issue or not, or an unresolved insulin resistance. People anecdotally telling me a few things, it's really hard to know. So obviously if you've been in ketosis and you've noticed certain types where your ketones, there is things are playing up all over the place when you're just even in a fasted state. That's usually an indication to me there's some sort of issue there, some sort of hormonal issue, something that's not actually functioning properly. This is not the same like, you have a big bolus amount of meat and stuff like that, and you literally fall out of ketosis, and then basically you go back into it. It's no different than in fasting, because in fasting you will have this cycling. As you actually release more, you break down all the old organelles and stuff like that, and you release all these amino acids into the bloodstream. You will basically, mTOR will raise, you'll cut off, you'll have a bit of an anabolic effect, but it'll be very minor. It's a very minor thing. And you may see a slight increase in blood sugar as well. But as long as it's very minor, it's a non-issue. It's when we see these strange sort of aberrations where we get these really high levels emerge all of a sudden or whatever, that's when I'm concerned. I'm going, that's not normal. There is an underlying insulin resistance that hasn't been resolved. What are they doing in their diet? What are they, are they snacking? Are they eating certain things which they think, like certain people really, they'll actually have like keto treats or carnivore treats, and they've got like alcohols, like all these sugar alcohols. And some of these sugar alcohols can actually increase insulin even higher than actual raw sugar. Let me say that again. Some of these keto treats that you people are eating, or some people are eating out there, can raise insulin to even higher levels than raw sugar. Okay? So this is a problem, even with the absence of actual, glucose in the system. So you can have these sort of strange effects that I've sort of heard about, or people have come to me and talked about. And I've always asked them, what sort of treats are you having? That's the first thing I basically ask, because I know that it's probably a sugar alcohol that's causing the problem. So, yes, anyway, talked about too much about on that. He goes on beef toxicity due to iron, copper, zinc ratios. Oh, that's just crap. Your body, the body metalloproteins actually regulate the uptake of these sort of things. It's only when you basically are supplementing and you get mega doses coming through. And if you look at all the studies that talk about this sort of stuff, it's supplementation. Without supplementation, I actually argue anybody show me one study with non-supplementation, just eating meat. Look at the Maasai, meat and dairy, multiple generations. They're not eating massive amounts of organ meats. Primarily, it's muscle meat. So the ratios don't play a role. All this bullshit is your body requires a certain amount, and it will take that amount that it requires. Supplementations cause imbalances. All the studies that I've seen where they talk about this sort of stuff, ratios or whatever, are imbalances, or if people are not on an ancestral diet, and it's usually copper. Usually people get copper toxic. It's been talked about for years, and it's because people eat too many plants and they get too much copper, very little zinc. So you shouldn't be supplementing zinc unless you've got a cold or stuff like that with an iron of 4 that actually can take it in to stop replication. But that's a different thing. I see people supplementing continuously on zinc, and I'm going, why? You're eating so much meat. Why the fuck are you supplementing zinc? Why are you wasting your money on all this shit and creating dysregulation and imbalances and all that unnaturally? Eat your fucking meat. Anyway, that wasn't directed towards you, Dylan. It's just a general sort of from Harry.
I can understand, Harry.
Yes, yes.
Oh, by the way, Harry, I think I need to be leaving like a few minutes if I am to show up on the next
that's
one.
Fine. Yes. Anyway, go and get your beauty sleep, mate.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I guess I'll be
I should have
leaving
got mine last night. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Take care and look after yourself, Lukey, and we'll chat in the morning.
Sure.
In my evening in that regard.
Enjoy the show, everyone.
You don't mind if we have talk about a bit what's happening in Brazil as well. So just for, you're closer to the actual source than I am, and it would be good to hear what's actually happening and all that. How up to date are you with things like ivermectin and things like that? Is it being used now in hospitals in Brazil?
None whatsoever. And the thing is, I think that medicine has been heavily politicized. I think because of our president and stuff, and people are mostly rejecting the idea of actually using drugs as any sort of auxiliary approach and things like that. But in South Brazil, I think that for several months now, ivermectin has been used also as a prophylactic, I think, and it has been having actually decent results. But it's really kept to a few places, and it's not been a widespread thing. So.
Yeah. But in those places where it's being used, they've noticed dramatic differences.
Yes, indeed.
That's what I thought, because I looked at even Mexico. Mexico basically was at 280%, and then they started administering ivermectin. It dropped to 6%. That's dramatic. Yes. That is a dose response, which even Bradford Hill, who developed the Bradford Hill criteria, would be very proud of that dose response, would say there is quite clear. You put something in, there is a dose response. You take it away, you get the opposite. That is basically quite clear. That is there is a high correlative inference in terms of statistical strength in thousands of orders of percent. It's not like the epidemiological studies, which is all food frequency questionnaire garbage. People don't know what they write in there, and it's even deliberately misleading because they don't even have all categories of food that people can answer. So you get skewed data anyway. It's just garbage. And then on the other hand, in this case, it is a dose response. This is clinical. We know that they give them this in hospital or they don't give them. The ones that get it, we've seen, because they've actually done some studies in Mexico as well. So they've actually done randomized control amongst their patients, which is great in that regard. And then that's how the recommendation happened. And that's why we've seen this dramatic change in death rates. So, yeah. Anyway, we'll get into it later in the evening as well, because there's a few other things that I want to ask you.
Sure.
Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Anyway, see you later.
Bye, everyone. Until later.
Thanks, mate.
No problem.
Anyway, back to this character. Insulin. Insulin causes increase in blood pressure. Insulin. That's, albumin is just an association. It's just another association. It's, Henry, it's garbage. It's an association. If that was the case, people that consume high meat-based diets, why does their blood pressure go down? As long as they take away the sugar and their insulin comes down, it's insulin that causes water retention and causes the problem. Anyway. Get to sleep. Bloody hell. You're as bad as me. 3 o'clock last night. Oh, yes. Yeah, it's bizarre. There's no rationale for whatsoever. Autoimmune diseases actually require more meat, not less meat, more meat, unless you've got that tick. The tick, that's a different thing altogether. That's when you basically shift to things like fish and other sources, animal products, which are not red meat. And that's because somebody's got a tick and has developed a sort of an allergy type effect and has an anaphylactic effect. So that's completely different. But so if you're in one of those areas where you get a tick, you don't remove the tick. You basically have to use, what is it called? It's like they freeze it. So you use it like you can actually go to a chemist. They can actually spray it with a freezing agent, and then it just drops off. But if you try to pull it, the prick remains in, and it can actually be busted inside and create this over time. It's because of the protein structures are very similar, and it generates some sort of effect. I don't know enough about it. I know that it does. It's a long time, but we're talking about now 9 years the last time I actually looked at that literature in regards to that, so I can't even remember it properly, but I just know what it does. It's really old information for me. Exactly. It does. It makes no sense. And again, you can basically, even if you get that tick thing, it's basically desensitizing yourself over a bit of time. That's all. Yep. It's all about, I tell people you don't need to rush. It's not we're not trying to win any awards. We're just trying to, sort things out. As I said, we have not lived ancestrally all our lives. We basically have been on shit diets for a long time, causing a lot of damage. And so it takes time for our bodies to adjust and sort themselves out. I need to stop being lazy and get to make my L-Reuteri yogurt. Ah, yes, you do. See you, Kate. Yeah, so in those sort of things, I always say to people, it's over time, things will improve. That's the thing. Once you're on a species-appropriate diet, you will get better. Ah, yes. Good to see you, Shell. As I said, that research is based on people with specific ailments and severe deficiencies. And so short term, fine. Long term, not a good idea, because it will create a retinol imbalance. Yeah, folk who claim that because we have nicotinic and receptors consumed of those items is fine. Yes, we've got a lot of receptors and we could actually put a lot of things in there, but, you know, the body can actually create some of its, you don't have to smoke the stuff. The body can actually create some of those things itself. So I'm wary of some of that data that people say that, it has these effects. I always say maybe it's some sort of other dysregulation that you haven't corrected. And once you correct that dysregulation, you don't need the crutch. I view it more as a crutch. And it does have negative effects, the nicotine part. So that's the problem. If you could get it without the nicotine, I don't know, do they produce these sort of cannabinoids without nicotine, or can they remove it chemically? I don't know. It's not something that I'm into, so I don't know enough. Maybe there is a form that is nicotine free. Don't know. That could be used for those specific therapeutic purposes. It's not for everyone. Most of this stuff isn't for everyone. As I said, supplementation is for specific circumstances, like anything, and it does have side effects if over abused for too long. Good to hear, Shell. Exactly. A lot of people do use that, and I think it's not an advisable thing. Long term, I think a lot of this sort of stuff, while as a short-term intervention can have a certain effect, a nootropic effect, long term, it will create other problems, neurological problems. Our brain chemistry requires specific nutrients which are in food, animal foods. They don't require a lot of these other sort of things. And even tribal people that use some of these things, they use them occasionally for certain conditions which they had noticed, and they'd noticed at the compounds, but they weren't using them like continuously. I mean, you look at people like Mary and others that go to see these tribal people, they don't see them continuously using nootropics. No, it is a medicine doctor will use these, and that's why they're called medicine doctors. In the tribe, they use them for specific purposes for a small, specific amount of time, in a dose response, and that's it. Beyond that is not a good idea at all. I would guess my question is about, I've already discussed all that about the IUs and vitamin D. Would you be getting it if you were out in the sun all day, like 5 hours? It depends on your skin pigmentation, how much you would get. It can vary from latitude and skin pigmentation. The darker your skin, the less. So there are associated issues. Obviously now, somebody that traditionally would have had a darker pigmentation that lived in somewhere like Africa now moves to Norway, that person should be supplementing. There is no way for, even if they're an outdoor worker, that they are going to get how much they need. They should be supplementing. It's the reason why we've seen an explosion especially within the communities that come from the Horn of Africa, like the Somalis populations in Northern Europe and North America. We've seen an explosion in autism rates amongst that population. Doesn't surprise me, because vitamin D is very important for brain development, and I'm not surprised that high deficiencies is what is driving. It's one of my hypotheses that one of the key things is deficiencies in fat-soluble vitamins is what is driving autism rates. Not MMRs. We've already discussed that about the Japanese withdrawing them for 2 years and no change. And that is a dose response that even Bradford Hill would be very happy with. And then when they put them back, it was no difference, actually even reduced slightly with more people doing more vaccinations. Now, I'm not saying the vaccinations were curing, the MMR vaccine was actually improving and lowering. No, I suspect that there would have been a bit of a healthy user bias, that people that basically went back to that were starting to, be interested in a few other things, and they started improving a few other factors as well, and that probably had a positive effect as well. So so let's not go to the other extreme. Say, the vaccine must be improving things. No, it's not. Vaccines, they are basically to deal with, those specific viruses. Nothing to do with basically, your brain chemistry and the way it actually works. That has to do with your nutrition. Are you eating species appropriate to have proper brain development? We know that the early Homo sapiens, because we call ourselves Homo sapiens sapiens, but the early Homo sapiens, which were like Cro-Magnon man, had 10% more brain mass. And then obviously after those mega beast collapse, and we had less, but that was slight, the mega beast collapse didn't happen immediately. It's sort of the amount available came down, and as it came down, we saw that brain shrinkage, less animal fats. So, and we know, we look at vegans and vegetarians, they've got brain shrinkage again. So if you've got a child that is not getting sufficient these sort of things, we're going to see a lot of we're already seeing kids dying on a vegan diet. They're not even getting to the stage where they can actually develop autism or a whole lot of other neurological issues. They're actually dying. That's how important fat soluble vitamins are. And it's pretty much the issue, a big endemic issue, and nobody's picked up on it. This is what really pisses me off. I've talked to I've even chatted with people from the African community, and I've told them, you guys need to be on vitamin D. You're killing yourselves without knowing it. You're in an environment where you were getting it naturally, and it didn't really matter because you're outdoors all the time. Now you're in an indoor environment in a latitude where you can't access it if you're not supplementing, and these people have to supplement, unfortunately, all year round. There is no, if you're dark-skinned in a cold climate, you need to be supplementing all year round. Let me say that again, all year round. Anyway, let's move on. So, yeah, anyway, that about the sun and all that. I don't know enough about how it actually affects. It's probably the vasodilating effect that some of the cannabinoids have, from what I've heard. So a bit like, nitric oxide, they probably increase nitric oxide. I think, I can't remember from memory, something along those lines. So like anything, exactly. It's to roll out new therapies and test them on the population. Birth rates aren't coming up. So the focus is biotech, too many unsavory characters. That's the problem. It's profits. It's all about profits. This new technology, let's put it this way, they can actually change it very quickly. If you do it a traditional way, like Novavax have done, or like Sinovax have done and all that, it takes time. Where with these ones, you can just basically just change a bit and redo it, reconstitute it. So you can actually generate it much faster. You can actually update and it's cheaper as well. Once you've got the technology worked out, it's cheaper. and you've got bigger profit margins. So that's where it really is being driven. And unfortunately, I have a fear that more and more of the vaccines that we've come to love, well, people like me have, at least, that are on the lunatic fringe, basically are going to be basically having to join that fringe and not take any of them because they may be using this technology. So I'm keeping a very close eye on vaccines at the moment to see what technology is being used and how it's being used, because I've got a lot of concerns. And yes, there are a lot of unsavory characters in this field who are motivated by money and profits and less about humans in that regard. Not that they want to kill them off or anything like that, but they just basically less, and they're pretty much, just give me a sec. My phone's going off. Oops. My sister, I'll call her back. Does she? Damn bitch, she's not even watching the program. Doesn't she know I'm online? Look, yes, it's a bit of a bugger. We've still got how many till September? So July, August, September. We've still got 3 months until Novavax becomes available. And it could be October. So 3 to 4 months. Yeah, it's annoying. Just keep your vitamin D up. Sure. Keep your vitamin D at good levels. That's all. Hey, Lukey, you're putting other stuff out there. Get to bed, mate. Get to bed. What's that? Does not appear. Oops. Error. Let me share that and let me get myself out of the way. Harry decided to give an in-depth answer for 200 minutes. No one can stop me. Yeah, it's a bit like that, isn't it? Well, bad luck to you. Yes. It's because it's done in the traditional way and it has to go through. It goes through. It still has to go through all the different phases, and it's not. The company isn't as big as Pfizer and all these other companies. They don't have the same influence with government, and so it's taking them longer to get to market, so to speak. Unfortunately, and the other players are getting more of the dosh in that regard. I'm glad that they were prepared to develop something in a more traditional way. It's slightly not exactly, which is better because it means that there's going to be less issues with anaphylactic effects or anything like that for those people. But in order to get it developed in that way, it takes longer. I'm hoping that in future years, if they've got something similar, that they will get their act together and actually be able to bring it a bit faster out and stuff like that. But, it is what it is. Normally vaccines to be developed take a number of years, and they have to go through a lot of testing and stuff like that to be safe. And I still want that to happen. I don't want accelerated introductions of anything to be business as usual. That concerns me as well. That's another concern of mine. So it's not only, so I'm glad that this company is taking their time to develop something appropriately, and I'm glad that I'm well informed to know that I basically need to maintain. So band parlors, maintain your vitamin D status. If you're in the northern hemisphere, get out in the sun, mate. Get out in the sun. Enjoy the sun. Maintain good vitamin D status. If you're in the southern hemisphere, 5,000 IUs. Keep your vitamin. And if you basically can get injectables, keep them stored away in a fridge. So if you've got injectables in a fridge, 10,000 IUs, minimum 3 per person. Have them in the fridge. Obviously make sure that they're used by date and all that sort of stuff, and all that. And so you've got the situation. There are videos online showing you exactly how to do it, how to inject yourself with vitamin D. It's not very, well, it may be hard for some people. You can always get a loved one to do it, administer it, but there's actually a doctor, and she actually shows you exactly. If you Google injecting vitamin D, and she's an MD doctor, and she will actually show you exactly. Let me just see if I can find it in my history. It's always, very old part of my history, but maybe I can find it. Do bear with me for a sec in that regard. But these are always helpful stuff. So I just have to find it because I don't subscribe to it because, I'm not interested in the other stuff. I was just interested in that one thing. Oops. Must be further back. Yes. Blame Bart. It's too many of his bloody videos here. And I didn't realize I was watching so much aerospace stuff as well. Give me a second. I'm going to have to search for it. I didn't realize it was so far. It's been a while, hasn't it? Yeah. Here it is. Found it. Her name is Dr. Quinn. Weight loss. And
so the first step is to wipe off the top of the vial with an alcohol swab. Then,
so she basically shows all the different parts that you need. I'll just drop it in there. So it's there, and I'll even pin that. It's only 2 minutes, 2 minutes and 25 seconds. That's it. So it's basically a very short video, and she just goes through and explains how to do this sort of thing. So if you get it before you get the Novavax, there's your option. Yeah, just don't. Yeah, I know. Scandinavia, fucking hell. Yeah, can be an issue. Yeah, hardcore. I just haven't told them anything because it's voluntary to go and get it, and I just don't tell them anything. I just act dumb, don't say anything. You know, they saw me take the actual flu vax, so they probably think, oh yeah, he's probably done this as well. So they just presumed, because they knew I did the flu vax. So if you did one, why wouldn't you do the other? He's not an anti-vaxxer. So they basically just ignored me. So they haven't said anything. But again, it's voluntary, like the flu vaccination is voluntary where I work. So it's a non-issue. My biggest concern is before Novavax appears that the federal or the governments try to impose something like that. At the moment, they're trying to encourage rather than force, luckily. But yes. Yeah, I'm always sort of wary of what people. Yeah, I just noticed that Neff came up with the same link, or slightly different. Yeah, but it's the same. I just checked it. Yeah, it is that one. Yes, bloody hell, mate! You're a greyhound. I should classify you as Neff the greyhound. It's pretty good. Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are other people out there, but you want a proper medical person telling you exactly how to do it, how to clean the vial so you don't get infected, how to basically, there's a large needle and a short needle, how to do it properly, how the doctors do it. So they go right through all the actual steps. She goes precisely all the different stuff, and that's what you want. And that's another option. It's not a problem in countries where you can actually get it at the pharmacy, or whether you can actually get it from your doctor where you've got no problems. But there could be issues in other parts of the world where vitamin D is, like, injections are very hard to get or restricted, or, you have to get it through medical person, which means that you can't actually get, if the doctor says no, you can't get it. If the doctor's sort of, not cluey on these things. Where in Indonesia, it's just a pharmacist. Miri just went to the pharmacist. So I think she sent her dad to pick it up anyway at the pharmacist. So it's much easier. But if you're in a place where, yeah, it can be an issue. So that's the sort of difference in that regard. Yeah, it depends. Yep, I hope he's on blood thinners, like, a low dose aspirin for about a month is probably a good idea. And maintains a fairly good immune system I'm not saying, as I said, I'm not saying that there's going to be risks with everything. There are risks, and there is a small risk with some people. But I know how you feel, sure. And the thing is, if your husband's a good man, stick by him. He's a loving man. I know some people are getting a bit weird out there if one of your, you don't give up on a relationship over the jab. I mean, that's just stupid. Okay. So, but at the same time, like you, it's his body, it's his choice. You don't own his body. He doesn't own your body. You make the decision for your body. He makes the decision for his body. And that's how it is. I know it's hard. So I know Mira's had it, and she says, I'm going to go and take the jab. And I go, why? You've already had it. You're going to be immune to it. So I'm trying to convince her it's a waste of time. But even if she was, it's the Sino, which is like it's similar to Novavax, but it's more traditional, so it's like it's a Sinovax. So I'm going, makes no difference. Don't waste your time. But definitely if it was one of the others, I'd be screaming down the phone, telling her not to do it. But anyway, that's me. Now I can overreact, especially if I'm passionate about something. Yes. Yes. I can be a mental strain on some people. Sorry, but I am. Yes. Ironically, absolutely no mainstream media talking about Novavax coming out, especially compared to the other ones where they were almost look, Devox, look what they're saying about the Sinovax. When the Novavax comes out, they will say, it doesn't perform as good as Pfizer. Pfizer's much better. It's got the best performance. They're basically pushing this sort of stuff because that's where the big money is. These traditionally made vaccines are cheap, easy to transport. They don't require expensive refrigeration or anything. And you know what? They're safer as well. But unfortunately, we live in a world where, profits, Pfizer is a big multinational. It makes a lot of profits, and they can actually get more advertising time. And when you can get more advertising time, you basically got a better profile. And then a lot of these media companies, you have to remember, if you notice, look at the ads. I always say to people, compare the ads on a station. So if you're watching, let's say, in your country, it's called Channel 5 as an example. This is just an example. Doesn't mean you may not have a Channel 5 at all. But let's say you've got a Channel 5. Every single country's got a Channel 5. It's a make-believe countries. And you've got specific type of an ad. There's one company that constantly advertises on that channel and another company that occasionally advertises. Which one do you think the news presenters, the commentators, in all these shows are going to be promoting? Obviously, the company that actually does the most ads. And that's what they're going to be promoting like mad, not because they are welded to Pfizer. If Novavax basically was a wealthier company, a bigger company, and actually did more advertising, they would get more support by that media giant because they're getting more revenue. It's all about revenue. These people are not concerned about your health. They're not concerned about anything. They will just promote anything that basically increases. And it's not even them. It's basically the guy that actually is directing, like they're in newsrooms, or there are basically people who are in charge, the senior editor, And that senior editor is the person who's in charge of that program. And that senior editor has been told by his manager, I want to make sure that your people are promoting and saying good things about these list of companies. They are our best customers. Our best clients. So that's who they're going to prioritize. So when you see people basically promoting, look at the ads and go, oh yeah, makes sense. These companies are putting more ads on this station or this news or in this newspaper. That's why they've got commentary which is favorable to them. So that's what I want you to keep an eye on, and that's the reason. It's not some Machiavellian reason or some conspiratorial reason. It's who's giving the majority of dosh. Obviously, a smaller company like Novavax doesn't have the same budgets like Pfizer. That's true as well. I've actually seen that on like some of the CNBC and some of the other media, which deals with the stock market. And yeah, they do talk about a lot of these in terms of stock price and all that, and you hear nothing. And again, it's because of the advertising dollar. Unless you've got the advertising dollar out there in the social media or in the media in general, the companies that are doing more advertising will get more of support by the commentary in that regard. That's all it is. It's nothing else beyond that. I wish they would basically just talk about the actual how these vaccines are designed, what they do, and what's the difference between them, but they don't, which is quite annoying. And I mean, it's not difficult. People talk about this sort of stuff, and I go, well, is it that difficult for the media? I'm just saving the Lukey's stuff. See, it's not bloody difficult. I will just zoom out of this page. And I'll come out. I mean, you only have to go to Wiki and look at all the different ones here. Overall map, the different types, all the different ones that are here. And they've only got the ones, if you take a look, the only ones shown here are the ones that basically are already out. Any of the other ones in development are not even shown, which is really, really annoying. So going through this whole thing, I can't see Novavax anywhere there. This is basically the Wikipedia page. It's not there. I'm not making any claims of conspiracy or whatever, but it just is so. I mean, even the Sinovax, well, actually that's demonized because it's Chinese. Obviously, we can't take that. But it's done in that traditional way. But, you know, and this is an American company, Novavax. So I just don't get it. Why are all these different? I've looked at other website organizations and none of them have it on there. They have other ones that still are in trials, but they don't have Novavax. And I'm going, what the fuck's going on here? It is really, really fucking weird to say that. At least I'm not making any assertions. I'm just saying that it really looks weird to the outside observer. Maybe it's, it got missed. Don't know how you can miss, a company where they're constantly talking about Novavax in terms of stock prices and all that. So why aren't they talking about one of their products? No one on the news speaks about vitamin D deficiency, exactly, or insulin resistance, and that is exactly it. Sure, nobody is. If you've basically got, especially if you're extremely obese and overweight, which means that you may need hundreds of thousands of IUs to basically get any measurable vitamin D in your bloodstream to basically provide enough 25-OHD to bring 25-OHD up. Somebody may have to megadose for a certain period of time because they just store it away in their fat tissue. But nobody talks about any of this sort of stuff. If we look about the research, last year, my first video on this matter, if you remember, if anybody goes back, I basically talk about vitamin D. It's a respiratory infection. It's a coronavirus. The flu is a coronavirus. All these coronaviruses have one thing in common. They cause respiratory infections. And the thing that kills you is acute respiratory infections or respiratory issues. So why the hell wouldn't vitamin D be the key player? The regulator of MMPs in the lungs is vitamin D. Insufficient vitamin D means you can't regulate, or you'll end up with lung crystallization, or the sort of where it becomes like glass, severe damage and severe fibrosis of the actual lungs. Well, that is due to dysregulation of matrix metalloproteinase and the lack of vitamin D to regulate it when you get these infections. So why the fuck isn't, this being discussed is beyond me, we've talked about other things like ivermectin and all sorts of things, which do have really good effects as well in basically dealing with viral infections and other types of infections. But I think the big thing, the big, you could say, elephant in the room is vitamin D. And it has been for a very long time. And I think there's another reason for it. For a long time, we've been bashed over the head by the medical establishment that basically you need to protect your skin from the sun. For them now to turn around and say we've caused this massive vitamin D deficiency, telling you that rather than saying get off the fucking seed oils that are incorporating in your skin and making your skin vulnerable to burning, no, we will basically keep you on the seed oils to continue the inflammation and damage, but we will protect you from those seed oils by whacking on cream and giving you statins, to reduce the amount of LDL that can be damaged by these toxic fats that came out of an oil refinery, because we can't basically affect our mates in the food industry that make shitloads of profits and give us a bit of a cut here and there. The medical establishment, that is. And that's the problem. They would have to basically roll back years and years of propaganda and say, we got it wrong back in the 70s. Because prior to that, humans have been out in the sun, enjoying the sun, eating animal foods, not industrial garbage that comes out of an oil refinery, and did not used to burn. Nobody burnt. When you've got sufficient fat-soluble vitamins from eating animal foods you do not burn. You only burn when you basically have deficiencies in fat-soluble vitamins and crap for food. And we're going next level now. Let's have fake meats and let's add even more crap. Let's even create greater deficiencies in fat-soluble vitamins. Let's add even more seed oil and crap and refined crap into the diet. You know, if we haven't put enough in there already. And and for them to admit, because those changes and those guidelines and the continuation of that bullshit is what is driving insulin resistance and what is driving vitamin D deficiency. And unfortunately, it's very hard to convince these people because they've been brainwashed basically. And it's a struggle, as one knows. Somebody has to do it themselves and see the effects, and only then do they realize they've been brainwashed. That includes even me, unfortunately. That is part of the reality. People like Luke and other people who have who have clued up on this stuff at a very young age in their teenage years or in their 20s. I take my hat off to them. They're probably also lucky they live in a time when there's more information available. I mean, when I was a youngster back in the 70s and 80s, there was fuck all. I mean, the only things I remember in the 80s having access to a bulletin board, a computer bulletin board, that was it. And then even in the 90s, I still used to run with a couple of mates some bulletin boards. We used to basically share. We used to have sharing applications because this is before BitTorrent or anything like that. We used to basically send stuff to people and they had to wait like hours to get it over dial-up and then send stuff back to us over hours. Yes, done that years ago. So a completely different environment, and most of the stuff were in medical libraries. There was nothing online. You've had nothing access. You guys, younger people, are fucking so lucky you don't realize it. Really, really lucky in that regard. Yeah, you probably won't. They're not a big entity, and if you're not a Pfizer or a Moderna or one of the big boys in the game, you don't get much of a promotion. Unfortunately, it is, but that is the world we give. I'll be forgiven for something. Yeah, too many sins. Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. I hope. I think they're still economically they're fine. They're not going to go bankrupt or anything like that. So eventually they will get some profits in the market, hopefully, because if they struggle and all that, they may abandon, and then we've got nothing, for the future. I'm hoping they don't do as bad. I'm hoping that they get through this, get the product to market, and then survive and actually don't are there to basically produce a similar product in the future. That's my only concern, because there's not many other options out there, unfortunately. Most of the other options are basically your MMR, your DNA, and your basically viral vector, which is basically the adenovirus in it. But it can be any vector. They can use any other type of virus as a vector to move it in. So what are your thoughts on the GAPS skin test? I don't know enough about it. So they say you can put egg white on the inside of your forearm and wait 4 to 8 hours and see if the skin turns red, has a reaction. Do you think it is valid? I don't know enough about it. I think I've heard about it, and it's been used for a long time, and it seems to basically show some sort of skin inflammation, but is it due to basically the proteins in the egg, or is it due to some other factor? I don't know. I haven't looked into it enough, because just because something's been around for a long time, it doesn't mean that it's a good test. We've actually seen other tests that have been around for a very long time that have really been poor tests, and we've got rid of them and moved on to other things. So I just don't know enough about it, AG. It's probably because I don't have a sensitivity to eggs. I can guzzle down shitloads and it's never been an issue. So my sort of standard motif is to people, if you get a reaction, don't eat it sort of approach. Like our ancestors would have done if they got a funny reaction, they'd go, I'm not doing it. So listen to your body sort of thing. Sometimes it's a bit hard to listen, especially if you've got underlying other conditions, which something may react, but normally wouldn't react. So I always say to you, did you consume it as a youngster and had no problems? Well, maybe it's a gut dysbiosis and not necessarily, you're not reacting to something. But whether this test, I don't know enough about it. It's been used for a long time, but not sure. It may be okay, but I'm not sure. Thanks, Shell. Thanks for I sort of tend to focus on esoteric things and other related things. You can't cover everything. Let's be honest. There's so many areas in human nutrition or other stuff like that. So it may be something in the future that I'll look at. Some of the allergy type stuff. I've looked at MCTs and stuff like that, but I haven't looked into eggs. I'll tell you why I haven't looked into eggs, AG. I think it's just basically, I've just presumed, like everyone else, that some people react and some people don't. It's a very small minority, and if you react, just don't eat it sort of attitude. But about the tests, whether they work, how good they are, whether they get any false positives or anything like that, you would really have to find a randomized control study of people who've got proven sensitivity to eggs. And I don't know whether there's a study like that. And then you put them in a lock-in ward and you basically gave them this and did this test and seed to see how they react, to validate the test. Has that been done? No idea. But I would Google and look for a test like a GAPS skin test, randomized controlled trial. And if you can't find one, it means it hasn't been tested. It's, so and now on all the talk about Wuhan lab leaking, hypothesis gaining momentum, expect saber rattling, and it's more politics than basically real stuff. A lot of the Australian scientists and other scientists that looked at the thing actually said that it's come from animals, because they can actually look at the mutations that take place and compared to the SARS-1 and the other stuff. So it's unlikely. Now, could they have actually had it in the lab and been looking at it? Potentially, but it may have been from an actual human that they actually got it and they were looking at it. So could then some of their people, because of negligence, got infected, and actually where one person had it, let's say in a rural area, They got the sample from that rural area. That person died. They got the information, and then it was something that they had in a lab, and then poor lab work potentially, got one or two of their staff got infected, got out into the community. Yeah, that could happen. There's always those risks. It's actually even happened with other things in Western countries. So it's not unplausible, but it's things where mistakes do happen. In any sort of environment, mistakes will happen. Who knows? But, from there to basically say that hypothesize it was actually created in a lab, unlikely. That it could have been leaked, something that was actually created in animals, moved to a human, was actually sent to this lab by the government, the local government there, because the national government wasn't aware of the situation until later on. That's why certain heads rolled at the local level because, anyway, that's the other politics of China, their own internal sort of not wanting to lose face, that traditional sort of Chinese approach, or being too fearful of the central power. So they were trying to, keep it under control, but they failed. That's the other politics of the side, but that's internal to that country. The reality is looking at the protein structures and all that Australian scientists have looked at, a number of other scientists around the world, it is definitely one that has come from another other species into humans. Now, as I said, there may have only been a few carriers initially in some village. They got that information, it could have been outside of Wuhan, small community or whatever. They got it in the lab, and unfortunately, rather than containing it there and researching it just in case it became prevalent in the community, one of their people got infected, then went out into the community, infected a whole lot of other people, in the fish market, went to shopping, like people go to supermarkets. And that's another possibility, but that doesn't mean that they actually created in the lab and actually released it. No, that's just nonsense. Because the Australian researchers and other researchers would have come across that. Now, just because the CIA comes up with really interesting and weird ideas, they've got a political agenda. I wouldn't trust anything that comes out of the CIA. That is a criminal mafia organization that's actually was in bed with a mafia. They actually ran, heroin trade out of Southeast Asia. They ran heroin into the US to finance some of their illegal activities. Why would you trust an organization that's up to their eyeballs in criminal activity to finance other criminal activity, which they think, it's so important for our national security? Well, you can still do that sort of stuff without becoming a criminal. That's what I think about that organization, what I think about their bullshit that they, because they just want, yes, China is a rival of the US, an economic, political and military rival. And obviously I would not want to live under a world of China. I would, I'll be quite clear about that. But the United States has not been let's say, the perfect ally or friend of most of its allies. It's sometimes misbehaved appallingly in their history. So, and still continue to, just because you've got similar democratic principles with us, if you basically, you can still be an asshole when it comes to your friends or even your own population, like the more recent stuff that's been happening. So, let me put that out there as well. But anyway, let's not get into politics too much. Hopefully my American friends will agitate more against some of those evils of their own country and try and take back their country from the politicians who are up to their eyeballs in corporate interests. Basically, all you need to do is just pass a law to basically ban all corporate interests, all groups basically being able to access your politicians other than the population itself, other than citizens. That would eliminate, and also bring in, eliminate all corporate funding for elections, and actually bring in, it means you guys have to pay a bit extra tax to get your democracy back. That's how it works. You pay a bit extra tax, You basically are able to provide funding, political funding, so they can actually do their campaigns without having to get it from interest groups that can control them. So either you control them and pay, or the interest groups control them and they pay. I think it's better you guys pay, because then you've got a better democracy. But that's my opinion. I'll leave it at that. If you love your country as well. I do, and that's why I'm against any groups or interest groups having control over politicians, even in my country. I want basically for money to be provided for elections and not for interest groups to be able to fund these people, because it basically is corruptive and corrosive. And it means the Bill Gates of this world and all that won't be able to have the influence over politicians, which is good, because it basically means then those people are going to come from people within the community and are going to be far better. You know, it'll give also opportunity for other people to come into politics that are better. Like in the past, we didn't have career politicians. We had people that basically had an interest in politics and got in there, had some ideas how to make things better. To get those sort of people back, you know, if you go back in history, you look at true statesmen, people that were truly interested in making their country better and making things better for their population. These bastards don't give a shit. They just want to look after their corporate mates. That's it, because that's who are paying their meal ticket, and then after they'll get a nice cushy job when they finish out of politics as well. Or their kids will, or whatever. It's a gravy train. It's so corrupt and so corrosive. It's ridiculous. I don't know whether it's reversible anymore. That's how bad it is in most countries. Anyway, let's move on. What you guys think about dark chocolate? Shitloads of oxalate. Now, have I consumed dark chocolate in the past? Yes. In terms of ice cream, yes. Do I recommend it? No. Do I consume it on occasions in ice cream? Yes. Am I a bad boy for it? Yeah, potentially I am. Yes, but yes, I sort of justify it like that. A small amount is not that bad. It's only a very small amount of oxalate. Yes, I sort of justify it like that to myself as well. Anyway, I don't mind bitter. I actually don't mind it. I'm a sort of less of a sweet, more of a savoury guy in some regards. I'm still trying to determine the reason why I have random cravings for sardines or tuna or on carnivore. Maybe the fat-soluble vitamins, I would suspect, Lukey. Are you getting enough fat? Are you getting enough of the omega-3s? Potentially. Could be. There are a few other things. There is niacin. Are you eating enough pork, mate? Or are you just eating beef, which is much poorer in thiamine and niacin? Could be. And tuna definitely is a good source of niacin as well. And I think it has a better profile also on thiamine, I think. It's the reason. I mean, I had 2 beautiful pork chops yesterday, about a bit over half a kilo of pork. That was my evening. I had a snack earlier, and then I had a big, juicy steak, 2 steaks, chops. Yes, pork. Yes, that was nice. What was it? 547, I think it was, grams. So what's that? Let's take a look. 547 divided. 547 divided by 28.333 is 19.3 ounces. Divide that by 16 is 1.207 pounds. So 1.2 pounds was two very enjoyable pork chops. Yes, very nice. Oops, what did I do there? I'm just going to go out for a sec because something's actually fucked up. Are we working properly? It froze on me for some bloody reason. Anyway, I don't know what happened there. I just got the big freeze. Bizarre. Anyway. Yeah, maybe just having a craving, just a general craving. Are you pregnant, Lukey? I'm just kidding. I'm joking. Don't take it serious. Yeah, don't know. Maybe you just like the stuff. I have sometimes cravings for certain foods. There's always some sort of nutrient that is in some food higher, and it may be, could even be more salt. Seafood tends to have a bit more salt. So, are you getting enough salt, Lukey? He's asleep now, so we can say whatever we like about him. He's a really good young man, I have to say. I do really enjoy his company. 100% is good for a cup of coffee. If I indulge in coffee at all, that is. Yeah, I still have 1 or 2 cups of coffee a day. I have had days where I just don't have any. Yeah. Just regular stuff. Yeah, I'm sort of. The only thing is I'm always careful about the ingredients behind. Always check. There's no seed oils. There's no stuff. I get the only one that I actually can find. When it comes to emulsifiers, very careful not to have a whole lot of emulsifiers. Sort of, my cutoff is probably lecithin, like soy, which is the least egregious in that regard. But it's just got to be careful of the ingredients. It's not the price, it's the ingredients. I mean, I sometimes find cheaper ones that actually have less crap in them, that have very little crap. So, and for my Saturday, and that was yesterday, I did indulge in a bit of chocolate. As I said, my cheat day is Saturday, and I do indulge in chocolate, ice cream, and stuff like that. But I am planning the next, to sort of move myself into a more ketotic stage in not too distant future, shortly, in a couple of weeks' time, and then we'll have to try and see whether I can get my ice cream making skills up to scratch, or ice cream disaster, or find a way to mitigate my ice cream making disasters, to be more precise. So, yes. Yeah, exactly. Could be. Because then again, it's a sort of what are you accessing? Because sometimes if you're accessing stuff, see the PUFA content is still going to be relatively low in all ruminants, and you don't need a lot. But if it's grain fed, he's a young bloke, he can't afford, grass fed or stuff like that. It just may have slightly less. And in those sort of circumstances, bit of fish now and then. I think we still consumed a bit of fish, but I mean, there are other sources. I know the mass I consume none whatsoever, no fish whatsoever. It's just dairy and ruminant meat. There's enough. If it's pastured, and theirs is pastured, you'll get enough omega-3s because the pasteurization just increases the amount of content of omega-3s, and you don't need a lot, especially if you're on an ancestral diet, so you're not inflamed and all that. You require far less. And these people, the hardy grasses that they find in steppe environments tend to basically provide higher, they're very, hardy, these short hardy grasses that the cattle consume, they tend to actually increase the omega-3 content in, certain types of grasses also affect omega-3 content. As I said, like the sheep up in Iceland, similar things. So you've got to know your grasses. I've always been confused and always wondered why the hell are farmers not actually cultivating, even regenerative farmers, why aren't they basically using some of these grasses which are known in the literature to basically promote higher, both D vitamins and also omega-3s in the actual flesh of the animal. So I've always wondered why. It's probably just because maybe it's price, maybe there's probably other factors. Price is probably the big one, I suspect, in the end game. Even if you're doing regenerative farming, you still need to be slightly price sensitive. So I suspect that's the reason. And if you're getting it for free in the environment you're in, why bother? It's just there for free. So I suspect that what it is always money involved in these things, unfortunately. Just the way it bloody is. Yep. Yes, those sugar alcohols. They really love to spike insulin. There's only a couple of sugar alcohols. I think it's erythritol. I think xylitol is a bit on the lower side when it's insulin response. But the majority of the others, I probably have to do something on this. But look, I don't sort of encourage people to use these sort of things, but I know some of you people do. I may have to do something on the insulinogenic. I have to find the study where I've got it. I can't remember where I bloody put it, but on the insulin effect of alcohol, sugars, because then at least you guys know to stay away from these alcohol sugars, definitely. So if you see a certain alcohol sugar, you'll get a reminder in your head from Harry, put the keto bar down. That's the sort of reaction you'll get in your head. So, yeah, probably you guys need to know, so you'll be able to look at the wrapper and say, no, we'll leave that. That's going to raise my insulin. And it's probably the reason why some people find it very hard. They're in ketosis and they've got good ketones and they're going, why am I not losing weight? And I'm going, So tell me what is species, what comes out of a factory and you're actually consuming. And then they usually go through, I get this bar. And sometimes because they're in North America and we don't sell it in Australia, I go, let me just Google it. I'll Google it. And I usually find, okay. And then I usually find out that, it's got this alcohol. It's got all that alcohol. And I go, okay, I know what your problem is. Give the fucking keto bar a miss. And usually when they do that, things sort themselves out. Yes. So it's those little indiscretions. And it's a problem, the reason why people have those sort of issues. There's just so much alcohol sugars out there now. The biggest problem is they're using new numbers now as well. So I'm not complete. That's why I have to, look at that study, but I have to also probably look at some of the new numbers as well. That's why it'll take a bit of research. So I don't expect it very soon, because I've got to look at all the numbers and actually see what they're related to, because they're just bastards, actually. Let's put it that way. They're using more of these new number systems rather than actually telling you what it is. So you have to go away and look for that alcohol, sugar, and find out what the hell it is. And what it's related to. And then once I know what it's related to, I can say, okay, all these are related to this alcohol sugar that we've actually done research on, and we know that it spikes insulin. So avoid this, this, and this. So yeah, it'll take a bit of research, unfortunately. So it's not something that's a priority at the moment. So it's something that eventually I'll get around doing. Then again, I may decide to do it a bit earlier. Don't know. I may consider it as a major issue in our community that needs to be dealt with. So I'll see how I feel about it. Yeah, exactly, Dylan. It just drives me up the wall. I can see these Maasai running around with mineral supplements, and these Inuit constantly supplementing themselves. They've got such deficiencies and such problems. It's just nonsense. Absolutely nonsense. It just creates more issues with people. And a lot of things, people should do things. They have a utility, don't get me wrong, but they have a utility in people who have pathology, have issues. And most of us have issues because we come out of a non-ancestral diet. We've got a lot of damage and we're resolving. But a lot of stuff does not need to be used. May be used in the first couple of months as we're transitioning, as we're sorting things out, but not forever. That is just complete and utter nonsense. And I can tell you, since I gave up the magnesium supplements, my muscle cramps have gone away. The complete opposite what you expect. Now, there are some people that have got deficiencies, and so too much or too little. And the too much probably causes dysregulation in other areas, which is probably what's causing it. So if you're getting enough from the diet, and I've done the videos on magnesium, on potassium, on some of the other minerals and all that, go and check those. And I think I even made a playlist called micronutrients or something along those lines. So go and check those and understand how these things are working in the body, and you'll realize I don't need to do this crap anymore. And it's expensive. It costs money. That's the other thing. Not only does it really not help, but it actually, Harry, are there any other things one would need to heal their gut lining besides? And the B complex, we're only talking about 3 months. So you need to basically always 3 months. And over those 3 months, you will not be taking a dose of 5,000 IUs, but a dose of 10,000 IUs. Why is that? Because we're trying to give extra food to the actual bacteria. So we're actually giving them high dose of vitamin D. We're actually trying to proliferate them rapidly. And we're basically giving them some food as well. So that's what we do. So if you're thin, that means you don't have much body fat on it or whatever, 5,000 IUs is all that's required. But most people that usually have gut issues are going to be a bit overweight. So I usually recommend 10,000 because some of that's going to go into the adipose tissue. And some of it needs to go to you and some of it needs to go to the bacteria. So that's the only reason. So, if you're carrying a bit of weight, AG, then 10,000. If you're not, 5,000. So, taurine and K2, depending on the age. If you're young, you don't need any taurine. If you're over 40, 1 gram. If you're over 50, 2 grams. If you're over 60, 3 grams. And if you're over 65, I'm going to go to 5 grams when I get there in 10 years' time. I haven't actually made up my mind completely. I think you need to be at that level for maybe about 2 or 3 years at 65, and then bring it back to 3 grams. But with taurine, always the blood pressure issue is always on my mind. It does lower blood pressure. So always make adjustments with your doctor. And that's not medical advice. It's just basically common fucking sense. If you're on those sort of blood pressure meds, meat. Yes, meat has got B vitamins. So once you actually do a 3-month course and vitamin D to grow those little buggers, then you don't need any more. You just basically get the B vitamins from the meat and the bacteria that will use some of the amino acids and some of the to basically feed themselves. And at the same time, they will basically exchange B vitamins amongst themselves. Isn't that nice? Nice little friends in there that basically are producing and exchanging, and we get some of that small surplus, which is a good thing. And remember, they require vitamin D to be fed. So you need to be either getting 5,000 IUs a day or be in the sun to provide sufficient vitamin D for the gut microbiome as well. Very important. This is another reason for gut microbiome issues. Again, if we take a look, lack of vitamin D doesn't feed the beneficial bacteria. We don't get enough B vitamins, B vitamin deficiencies. We don't eat the right foods, B vitamin deficiencies. We don't get enough fat soluble vitamins. We start having basically tissue issues, too much matrix metalloproteinase is not being regulated and overexpressed, diverticulitis, all sorts of other shit. And we're talking about shit in this case. So again, it's all have to do with the sun and the diet, which we're fucked up completely, and we're in the mess which we are. So once you correct these sort of things, then you can ease off on them. I mean, I sort of don't sit around. I now, the early days when I was decalcifying, there was a reason for high doses of MK4. I don't anymore. Now it's occasionally I have like a bit of a 3-month stint per year, and I sort of have in every quarter of the year, I will have a month, and a month. So with every quarter, 4 quarters, I'll have about a month of dosing MK4. The majority of my MK4 comes now from dairy and meat products. I don't supplement. So most of the time. And taurine is a regular thing because I'm in my mid-50s and I do 2 to 3 grams. Sometimes I forget to do it on the day and I don't give a shit. Choline, I only do it for my genetic reasons. None of the rest of you need to do it. If you're getting enough meat, you're getting enough choline, eating eggs and stuff like that, even you'll get more than enough. And as long as you've got the genetics, you can convert methionine to choline, so not an issue. You just convert less if you're eating it, or supplementing it. That's all. So yeah, those are the sort of things. As long as you're getting enough serin for phosphatidylserine, phospholipids and stuff like that, which are very important for the brain. We know phosphatidylserine has been proven to reverse and silence genes. Let me say that again. Phosphatidylserine has been shown to reverse and silence genes of neurological diseases which are genetically based in Israeli citizens. And this research was done in Haifa and in Tel Aviv. And they actually showed quite clearly. And what foods are very high in phosphatidylserine and all that? Animal-based products, in particular, organ meats and eggs. So, when you're looking at eggs, especially the egg yolk, you're talking about a lot of a lot of choline, a lot of phospholipids and stuff like that. You're talking about it is an absolute superfood, compared to the bioavailability of the protein is much higher than meat, than everything. It actually is the most superior. As I've said, the only thing, it's got vitamin C is the issue there, and you got to eat a lot to get some of the nutrients. But generally speaking, it is an absolute superfood, and it should be part of every healthy diet should incorporate some level of eggs, 2 or 3 eggs a day, or if you don't like having it every day, have the occasional 6 eggs like every 2 days or every 3 days. I usually sometimes have a 12-egg omelette in a day. So I'll cook up some bacon, and then I'll make a big omelette, and I'll throw all the bacon in there and just, yes. So, nothing like animal foods. And remember, the nice thing about it, all the nutrients that you're getting, why waste your money on supplements? Is there any difference between A1 and A2? Well, there's a lot about the casein protein and all that. I personally think it's overblown in that regard. There may be some people that are sensitive to that casein. That's true. For the majority of our existence as a species, we've consumed A2 milk. So Southeast Asia, A2 milk. Africa, A2 milk. Central Asia, A2 milk. Our human milk is A2 milk. So pretty much every continent where we've had domesticated animals, or we've basically consumed A2 milk. A1 milk comes from Northern Europe. It's a couple of thousand years ago where there was a mutation that happened in some of the cows in that region. So a lot of theorizing, but suffice it to say that some people seem not to react very well to it. People that come from those regions, like the British Isles and parts of Northern Europe, don't seem to have any problem with it whatsoever, unless they're not on a species-appropriate diet. And so even some of the issues related to it may be related to the lack of lactoferrin, so maybe with a lack of lactoferrin, these compounds, but even with a lack of lactoferrin, I have not seen very strong, it's associational, there is no strong clinical dose dependency. And I have some theories and some stuff. I don't want to say too much about it. I do want to make a video. I do plan to make a video, and I don't want to give too much away, so any of my competition listening. But I do want to touch into it and actually, get into it in a deeper way in that regard. So I'm not going to say any more, but if you don't seem to have any sensitivities, don't worry about it. So the raw milk that I have is an A2 milk. I used to consume, and I still consume A1 milk at work. Most cows, even the A1, actually produce both A1 and A2. They don't produce purely A1. So there's a partial expression of this mutation, this casein mutation, and even those cows that produce A1 milk, it's actually a mix. It's not pure A1. It's just that the majority of cows on the planet, bar these regions of the world, are A1 also produces more milk. The cows actually produce more milk. It's the reason why a lot of dairy in Australia and North America and many parts of Europe uses now predominantly milk that is an A1, A2 combination type cows that produce this sort of combination because it seems that it actually produces. So I know that the dairy cultures of Northern Europe were much stronger than many other parts of the world, and this pressure to get more may have actually brought about this mutation as a method. But at the same time, at the end of the day, all these proteins are broken down to basic amino acids. If you've got acidity in the stomach, what do? All proteins, even casein, will be denatured in the stomach because of high levels of acid. So they'll be broken down. There are some peptides and all that, but at the end of the day, those things still need to come through the gut through transporters. Unless you've got leaky gut, it's not going to happen. It's like a lot of things. A lot of things actually affect people due to leaky gut. And that's, I'm going to get into the video. I'm saying too much already. Anyway, let me stop there. So usually a lot of these things, when we're talking about lectins and all sorts of things, they're all related to linking back to the gut problems anyway. So yes, fix your gut, you fix many issues. Anyway, I had tricks. See, when you get me going, I actually give away too much. I had a tick 6 weeks into going keto over 3 years ago. I went to the ER, but it left before the nurse saw me. I think my lipid profile killed it. Don't know, mate. Don't know. Yes. But if you ever get another tick, you basically they use like a spray that actually, it's like it freeze dries it and then it just drops off. So with its little injectable sort of needle, not breaking inside your body, but actually falling out. And so you will not get this say it properly, Harry. Be sensitizing, over sensitization. Fucking hell. Tongue twister. You're going to have a laugh on me. How far behind I am? Fuck. I'm behind. And it's 3 hours. Anyway, guys, I've loved it while it lasts. I'm going to leave it at that. I'll read the comments later, everybody's comments. Can N15 really tell us what we were more carnivorous than, example, Arctic foxes? Yes, it can. But you have to look at also the carbon. What is the source of the carbon? So that if the source of the carbon is from another ruminant, that basically, and that's what it is. We know that basically the carnivores were eating those, and we were eating the carnivores, and we were eating ruminants as well, and that's where we got basically the N15. So that's how you can work it out. Whether are we eating other carnivores? Were we more, what type of other animals were we eating? We just keep it simple. We don't go into all the other chemistry, all the other isotopes, because you're trying to not complicate people. But this is how you can actually differentiate the sort of the food sourcing. This is how they look at the other carbons, and they can work out. Remember when I did the actual video on the ancient Greeks, and I actually showed that the majority of the the N15 was coming from ruminants, land-based ruminants, and there was very little coming from, and the next biggest group, which was also a small amount, within that box area, was in just the periphery and overlapping outside the periphery, which basically just meant that there was a small amount of coastal fish. So they were able to work out from, obviously, the N15 is still concentrated in fish because, you've got seagrasses and stuff like that. Remember, seagrasses actually migrated onto the land and actually became trees and all that. Anyway, let's get back to, so little fish eat them, bigger fish eat them, blah, 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 the food chain. So obviously they concentrate the N15 as a consequence. So, yeah, so that sort of stuff. I'm not really into the MK7. Nick, I'm not into the MK7, to be honest, mate. I would, and Bans Parlor, yes, yeah, I know. It's crazy times we live in the political sphere. But yeah, getting back to Nick, yeah, I don't know what your conversion's like, mate. So I probably need to do a video on conversions, but small amounts, everybody can convert small amounts of MK7. It's the excess amounts that we just can't, and then it circulates in your bloodstream for too long, and it can't be converted to MK4 in the liver, and as a consequence, this high circulation can be reactive with other things, and that's why I've got an issue with, only certain things should stay in the bloodstream. Everything, vitamin D gets stored, retinol gets stored, everything gets stored. It's not good to be in the bloodstream. If you've got liver dysfunction and you're dumping retinol, that's because you've got liver dysfunction. It's not the retinol's fault that you've got liver dysfunction. It's just your inappropriate diet in the past that created the damaged liver and the fibrotic tissue. That's a different, but you know what I'm getting at in that regard. Yeah, can you find a liposomal that only has MK4? That would be much better. Even if it had some of the other menaquinones, they do convert much easier. They're in smaller amounts because they do exist in smaller amounts. They can't. That's why they use MK7. The reason why they use MK7, they can extract it from soy. That's basically it. Remember, fermented soy, natto. That's how they get it. So they're able to ferment shitloads of soy and extract the stuff. And it's cheaper. Where from animal sources, it's more expensive. That's why the MK4 is more expensive. Just the way it is. Yeah, so... Yeah, yeah, it's not as I said, we don't only look at the N15, we've got to look at the carbon footprint in order to determine the type of animal that animal was eating and what we're eating and which animal we're eating. So that's how it actually works out. Because sometimes you can have a certain type of carbon, which indicates that we're eating more carnivorous animals, or we're eating less carnivorous animals, we're eating more ruminants. So ours tends to be more ruminants, but we've had some increases in some of the carbons, which actually indicate that we're in certain cases in the past, we were eating even other carnivores. Now, why were we doing that? Don't fucking know why we were doing that. Nobody knows. We're speculating maybe the food supply was slightly down at the time, and so our ancestors decided, not many mammoths around. Let's knock off some of the cats or whatever. The more dangerous things to kill, because there is more risk killing a cat compared to some of the other, compared to ruminants, because cats can fight back and can, and have the potential to cause harm when you corner them. But at the end of the day, some cases they did, because, when you're hungry, you're hungry. So, yeah. And I think the other thing that probably we don't say, why are we more? It's possibly probably also, it also indicates how much animal protein we're consuming. So some animals have a certain, like, a protein to fat, or they have got a different combination, or they eat a certain amount and then they can go without for a number of days without eating. And so where we tended to eat more often, larger amounts, and so we concentrated these levels even higher. So there is that element to it as well. So is it correct to say we're more carnivorous because of that? We're splitting hairs when it comes to that sort of issue. We're splitting hairs. At the end of the day, if an animal is eating far more of the flesh of other animals, it is technically speaking, it is more carnivorous. If you're eating less, it's going to be less carnivorous. If it's eating less plus plants, it's definitely going to be less carnivorous. So it has to come down to the quantity at the end of the day. So yes, our ancestors, it's probably the reason why they were big, robust. If you look at the skeletons of these people, they were big, massive. They had bigger brains, 10% bigger brains than us, like Cro-Magnon man. They were big, sturdy, tall, very tall. We know from the bones. And so they had these high concentrations. Then we hit agriculture, and we had, poor fat-soluble vitamins, poor animal protein nutrition. And what happened to the population around the world, in many parts of the world? We shrunk in height, and our brain, our brains didn't, we started getting other abnormalities and stuff like that. So basically, and I think that's what drove us to actually then domesticate more animals, to add, and slowly domestication of animals, picked up pace in that regard. Yeah, anyway, I could go on for hours when it comes to this sort of stuff. I'm going to go straight to the bottom where I'm getting the commentary from you lovely people. And I will say it is a pleasure. Thanks for being here. And I will see you lovely people next week. Anybody that's in the Australasian area, I will probably see you later tonight, some of you lovely people. So see yous. I'm going to go for a bit of a walk and then come back and have a nice, what am I going to have? I may even take the burgers out. I did pig out on Thursday on burgers, but I may pig out again. I haven't made up my mind. So, yes. Anyway, you're welcome, everyone, and have a nice remainder of the weekend. And if I hopefully see my North American friends next week, and I'll see if I can get a few things out this week. No promises. I'm still dealing with a number of family issues and a whole lot of other things currently. Dad's got a number of issues that I'm having to sort out. So I'm getting an electrician over. So hopefully we can sort that bloody problem out. So, yes. So I've been on the run around with them. I'm also getting the utility company to sort out something as well. So that's another bloody issue. So there's a few technical glitches at Dad's place. So we need to sort out. So that's fucking me around, taking a bit of time back and forward. So I've got a few other things, but hopefully I may be able to get something out, a few things out next week. I'm going to try. No promises, but I will try. There's a couple of issues out there. A couple of people are talking shit and nonsense on a number of issues. I'm going to do a short video also on the on that, the vitamin D, vitamin A, that guy that actually has a bit. I'm going to do a bit of that, just a short one, with a guy that does 25 eggs. At least I'm to provide some of you guys that are more out there as keyboard warriors, give you a bit of ammo to use against some of these people. So you've got at least some ammo. And then I will later this year, I'm going to do like a comprehensive on all the myths and legends about toxicity, about fat soluble vitamins and all that, and sort of more explain about all the sort of health issues and health problems, and and show that it's far more complicated picture than some people make out, that it's just the amount you take. No, it's what state your body's in. Ancestral people had healthy bodies. We've got a lot of dysfunction, and there's a lot of dysfunction that can drive a lot of these things. And so people think that even more of something or less of something corrects it. It doesn't. You haven't fixed the problem. All you've done is take off. You could say it's like taking off the foot off the accelerator, but you haven't fixed the problem. That means, you put that thing back, it revs up again. You want to take off. You want the thing to work properly, not to basically misbehaving and all that sort of stuff. So that's the key thing. And at least then you guys get a bit of help out there with fighting the good fight with some of these absolute crackpots that don't know what they're talking about and just make up shit. And the most annoying thing is, what's wrong with people just saying, look, I don't know. There is no research on that, but all I can go is back on some archaeological evidence or whatever, like we say, like Bart and me say, we haven't got people locked in wards for decades and decades on specific diets or whatever. But what we can do is go back and look, what were our ancestors eating for thousands and thousands or millions of years? Well, they were eating highly carnivorous diets, and the bones do not lie. The collagen in the bones tell us that. So, how many fucking years does it take to adapt to meat? If you can't do it in 4 million years, there's something fucking wrong with the whole concept of biology and evolution and adaptation, and these people expect us that we can adapt to carbs in only 5,000 years, but we can't adapt to meat in 4,000 million years. I mean, you have to be really moronic to basically accept this logic. There has to be something mentally wrong with you. Ted's right. Are you retarded? Exactly. He's fucking right. Are you fuckwits, cockwombles retarded? Anyway, that's my last little... I had to get that out. Anyway, guys, see yous.